There are, however, seemingly irreplaceable fullbacks who have galvanised squads, shored up defences, launched myriad attacks, and gone on to establish legendary status at their respective clubs with performances that demand respect from management, teammates, and supporters. Think Stuart Pearce, Gary Neville, and more recently Trent Alexander-Arnold. Well, tonight's guest was a catalyst for glory in two very different eras for Swindon Town Football Club. Initially harnessing the benefits of the brutal training regime and management techniques of Paolo Di Canio, and then, in 2009, returning to a hero's welcome and lifting the same trophy in a glorious season under Richie Wellens that was eerily cut short by COVID. Tonight, our special guest, a bona fide Swindon Town legend, will be lifting the lid on his first League Two Championship winning campaign with our club. Bouncing back from a soul-sucking relegation campaign, the incendiary management of former Premier League icon, his mercurial teammates, and an ever-busy transfer merry-go-round at the county ground. So, Scotland cap, opponent of Lionel Messi, and in a Swindon Town shirt, 4 seasons, 139 appearances, 8 goals and 2 Champions trophies. He's a Red, and yes, he hates Oxford. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the captain, our captain, Paul McLean Caddis. How are you, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks for that introduction.
You're very welcome, buddy. You're very welcome. Richly deserved after such noteworthy service of our football club. How's this evening finding you? All settled in and ready to go?
Yeah, all fine, all good. Yeah, just watched the first half of the Burnley game there, but yeah, all good to go.
God, you're a glutton for punishment. I've got to be honest, mate. I've got absolutely zero interest. What was the score?
They're up 2-0 at the moment.
Are they really?
It just makes it a bit more interesting at the bottom, doesn't it?
It does. Make the go of it, putting the heat under Lampard for sure.
Yeah.
I'll introduce you to my co-host, a big admirer of yours, Tyler. Meet Paul. Paul, meet Tyler.
Tyler, you alright, mate?
Yeah, I'm not bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Not bad.
Super. So, Paul, thank you for ever so much for being so generous with your time. I appreciated your message earlier about the fact that you're not time poor this evening, but as you can see from our growing list of listeners, there is most certainly demand both to talk to and hear from you. But what we'll do in terms of a bit of format, we'll have a run through what was that pretty bonkers season under Paolo, which ended up with the silverware. And then as we get towards the end of the show, we'll start to introduce a few listener questions. If there are a few that are sort of pertinent to the points that we're making as we're rolling along, we'll be sure to inject them in, mate. Does that sound all right with you?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. That first bit might take you till Tuesday to get all the answers.
I think it possibly will. Well, Paul, we always say at the end of the show, mate, don't be a stranger. And as you probably gathered, I'm teeing you up for a revisit, mate. We're going to come back to the Richie Wellens season at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen. I mean, obviously, there's 2 of us that host this show, Paul, and Tyler's straining at the leash to get us rolling tonight. But I was saying to Tyler, listen, probably the most sensible place for us to start is, where were you when you learned of the appointment of Paolo Di Canio at Swindon Town?
I was lying on my sunbed in Cyprus. I was in Cyprus at the time with my partner and my best mate and his partner. And I just got a text from someone at the club. I think it might have actually been Marie, who texted and said that Di Canio was getting the job. And obviously, when you see that name, it's considering what happened the year before as well. My first year at the club wasn't obviously ideal. So, so for somebody like that to come in with that big name and stuff like that, because I always worried. I worried after we got relegated going down to League Two that the club were going to try and go a different way and appoint a manager who just wanted to go long ball and a bit direct and wanted big, strong lads, which I certainly wasn't. So I was worried, to be honest, about the next appointment. But then when I seen Di Canio, I thought, perfect chance. Like, he wanted to play football, surely.
I mean, we're not going to dwell too much on the season before, but I mean, yeah, it was quite a contrast, wasn't it? I mean, did you? I mean, I don't really like talking about Paul Hart, but Paul Hart came across as being a pretty kind of what's the word for it, Tyler? I can't imagine he was the easiest to get on with, was the impression that we got from the stands. So, Tyler, would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. He didn't come across as one that would be too easy to get on with.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I'll defend him a little bit there and say it wasn't actually too bad. Listen, how long was he there? I can't even remember. He wasn't even there that long, was he? He was there for, what, 2-3 months? It was just, he just came in at a bad time or just on a bad run of form. He obviously didn't help himself with the way, like you've clearly described there, the way he came across with the supporters and stuff like that. And I don't think he connected with the fans at all. He brought a little Scottish guy in with him as well that worked with him for a bit. But listen, the year before was a write-off. I think a big factor in that season was we lost Charlie Austin in the January. I think Charlie had done his shoulder, didn't he? So we missed Charlie for quite a bit of that, and we ended up with all due respect, like, we had obviously a fantastic career, but we ended up with like Vinnie Pericard and Thomas De Sevi as our main strikers that year, and we were struggling. There's no two ways about it. To go to Charlie Austin to those two was obviously a bit different.
Yeah. So, Paul, did you? I mean, obviously you've got strong connections. You haven't long left Celtic, and obviously Paolo was a legend up there. Was there anybody? Did you get any feedback at the time from Celtic as to what to expect?
No, not really. But a man that I grew up working under, like it was the youth team manager was Tommy Burns, and Tommy Burns signed Paolo Di Canio at Celtic, and I always remember Tommy telling us stories about when he was manager, stuff like that. And the one that stuck out with Di Canio was he used to come in every day and on a motorbike, and that doesn't really happen in Scottish football, to be honest. People driving up with motorbikes and stuff like that, especially at Celtic. You're an easy target, so I'm surprised nobody tried to launch bottles of Iron Brew at him. But yeah, so he used to come every day in his motorbike, and Tommy used to say to him regularly, get rid of that motorbike, get rid of that motorbike. And he clearly was exactly the way he was as a manager. That's exactly the way he was as a player, because he was stubborn and he wouldn't get rid of it. It was clearly his way or no way.
Blimey. So, yeah, I mean, so he wouldn't get rid of it. Obviously, utterly fearless in terms of any kind of retribution from the blue side of Glasgow. They're riding around on these two wheels.
Yeah.
So you're laying on you're laying on your sunbed then in Cyprus. You get this news from Marie that Paolo's on his way in. It sounds like you were sort of smacking your lips then, really. Sort of, as you say, you were probably expecting, probably what we ended up getting under David Flitcroft, which was, long ball, bomb it forward. Yeah. You weren't. You knew you weren't going to get that. But were you confident then, Paul, like going into League Two? Because obviously you've seen firsthand. You've done enough commentary this season at Swindon. Yeah. I'm sure you still speak to the lads. It's proven an increasingly difficult division to get out of, and the style of some of the sides that we've played this year with their very, very direct tactics, the likes of Sutton, very, very difficult. Did you immediately, as you're sitting there on your sunbed, did you start to think, hang on a minute, whilst this is obviously a brave decision, did you have your doubts?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Yeah, I did have doubts, because being selfish, I thought, brilliant for me, I want to play football. But then I'm thinking further afield, and I'm thinking, but there's this guy who's like a top player. Does he know anything about League Two? Does he know anything about, with all due respect, some of the teams in that league, how they play? Like, I remember, I'm probably going a bit too far in front of myself here, but I remember the first game of the season we played, or one of the first games of the season, we actually played a Friday night away to Macclesfield. And it might have been one of the first away games, actually. And so we played a Friday night, so we're obviously travelling north to Macclesfield, and Di Canio decided that basically he must have thought he's Paolo Di Canio when nobody goes on the roads on a Friday, so he wanted to leave at like something mad, like 3 o'clock or something, and we ended up being really late for the game. We had to do a warm up on the coach. He'd read the team out in the coach. We turned up, we lost 1-0. And obviously he went absolutely mental at us, but really it was his fault. The preparation was a nightmare. But yeah, but going back to that, just on the sunbed at that time, I still had a week left of my holiday actually, and he wanted us all back in, like literally the next day he got appointed. So I had to cut my holiday. Well, I spoke to him on the phone, and he said, like, have your week, we'll see you when you get back. And so obviously the starting date was meant to be a week later, or the rest of it, but I bought a flight home and came straight back and was back in for his first day.
Oh, blimey. How did that go down with the family?
Oh, it was all right. It was to be honest, I went away with my mum and dad and that for a bit with my partner, so we were already away for 10 days in Spain, and we went straight to Cyprus with my mate for a week. And I'll be honest, I've got a body like a snowman, so it was absolutely roasting. So I was desperate to get back. Cyprus was too hot for me, so yeah. But yeah, I got my holiday a week short, to be honest.
So what was it like on your very first day then, Paul? I'm guessing you weren't the only one that sort of cut the holiday short and got back. Did the whole squad come back, or was it dribs and drabs?
No, well, everybody came back, to be honest. I just remember walking in the first day and just seeing this really cool, suave guy with his sunglasses on and the tight jeans and stuff like that, and just dressed like an actual full-on Italian model. And just, I think everybody was just in awe to start with. Initially, that like it's Paul the Canaries at Swindon Town, with all due respect, like it's like, wow, he's our manager in League Two. Like, what a coup! Like,
I
so,
noticed
yeah.
I noticed you used the word initially there, Paul. We'll come on to that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. But yeah, when obviously we seen him, we were in awe, and just it didn't take long to get us going, to be honest.
Oh, blimey! So I mean, so Paul, you're Tyler's listening with great interest, no doubt, taking notes because he's just taken over managerial duties of Old Town Athletic in Swindon. So he'll be scribbling this down, mate, and pulling them back right and early. I hope you're taking notes, Tyler.
Well, I'm not sure I'll be doing the sliding about on the carpet in pre-game meetings, so I'll leave that on free.
Or smashing TVs.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think you've quite got the pockets for that, Ty. I mean, I don't think you've quite got the depth of pockets for that. I know I haven't for a start. So Paul, all right then. So you say like your first day you came in super suave. What was his approach then? Like as you guys are all coming in through the door, obviously you're off the back of a fairly sort of soul sapping relegation. Like you said, you've lost Charlie. You've had to put up with Paul Hart. You've suddenly had this like revolutionary news that Paolo's taken over. You come in, you see him. What was his approach to you guys like? What was his opening gambit to you all? Did he sit you all down, or did he speak to you?
Yeah, no, I think he initially maybe did have a few phone calls beforehand. Cause I definitely spoke to him before I had actually met him. So, but the first day, as most managers do, he just got everyone in the room. He introduced all his backroom staff, and listen, he brought a lot of backroom staff with him. So it was just trying to get used to names and stuff like that, and just tell us how he wants to play. He wants to play an attractive style of football. He's not here to get in the playoffs. He's here to win everything, win the league, win cups. He wants to be involved in as deep into the FA Cup and stuff like that as he can. He's going to try and bring a winning mentality to the club, and he did warn us from day one it will be tough. Just stuff like that. So we knew what we're in for. Like, he gave us a heads up. Well, I'm saying he gave us a heads up. We didn't quite know what we're in for, but he certainly gave us an idea.
Did you believe him though, Paul? Like when he's giving it all of this? Because I played at a half decent standard of sort of semi-pro football, and I had a couple. I remember gaffers coming in with the same sort of gambit, and you know your limitations as players. You know you're almost like, I don't like to say this because but you kind of know your limitations as well. Yeah. You know your budgets and what. You know you're realistic. And he comes in and he's on this completely different stratosphere, and he's telling you about going deep into the FA Cup. And you'll know we haven't got a great reputation in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And so do you sort of sit there with your arms folded like you saw sort of some of the Spurs players doing with Mourinho on the Amazon documentary? Or are you all kind of leaning in and really buying into it?
No, yeah, there's a bit of both. I think we're buying into it, but at the same time, I think, well, shows then, like, we want a bit from him as much as he's going to get from us. It's like, well, what we're going to do, we obviously need players in, and etc. So we knew it would take time, but we did believe him because he was very serious and very direct in the way he spoke. He listen, fans will know himself. He never said something he never meant. I put it that way. He would always stick by everything he said, even if he thought he was wrong. He would still stick by it. So he was really good in his message and demanding, and straight from day one he was on it. Like, his staff were on it. It was more De Canio done everything, but then his next in line wasn't really his assistant manager for Fabrizio. It was actually the fitness coach, believe it or not. So De Canio done everything from warm-ups right through, and then would just send us to the fitness coach for runs and stuff like that. But no, listen, he drove a very strong message that he almost forced us to believe, but he backed it up, so to speak.
Yeah, gotcha. So was obviously they've all come in. They're all Italians, and at the time, Paul, I was a shirt sponsor of Swindon Town, so I was involved with the 442 sponsorship. So I was quite surprised when I got introduced to some of the guys that were part of Paolo's team that obviously the English wasn't great. Did you was that a sort of an issue, or was that a kind of doubt in your mind at the time? Did that have any issues for you, like in terms of, the starter training, like trying to get that strong message across? Like you said, everything came from him.
Yeah.
I'm sure he didn't want those guys being seen as being token, and I'm sure they were all very talented, had their own roles. But was language an issue?
Not initially, not because, listen, the Canio was that demanding and literally done everything. To be honest, you would hardly hear. I don't think I know what the goalie coach's voice sounded like. You never heard him. Just the Canio done everything, and so the language barrier wasn't that much of an issue. Maybe more so the physio, for instance. Maybe people that are injured will spend a lot of one-to-one time with physios. That might have been a little problem, but in terms of everyone else around about them, they knew the basic English. They knew how to tell you to run, sprint, pass, shoot. It was the word run, I think, they learned first before anything.
So I mean, obviously, football being the sort of environment it is, particularly a kind of ferocious professional football dressing room, did you guys sort of have the same levels of respect for his team, on the basis that obviously he's, like you said, you sort of painting a picture of Paolo really driving all of this, but his team, I'm not going to use the word bystanders because they're clearly carrying out his instructions, but did you guys have the same level of respect for them that you did for him?
Yeah, listen, definitely. I think the way we seen it was he's the boss and everyone is under his demands, and that's how it is. And we could see that was evident with his staff as well. He treated his staff the way they treated the players. Like, you've probably seen clips of him, like the way Italians do, the open hand slap in the back of like Fabrizio's head and stuff like that, and the side of the pitch. You know what I mean? That was him. So he treated his staff the way he treated the players. That was just his way. It was always his way or no way, and that's how he worked. But listen, it's difficult to argue against it because he brought success to the club.
Yeah, and I mean, Tyler, you'll back this up because you've had some contact with Fabrizio as well. But it's interesting now, Paul. Like, you won't have Fabrizio say a bad word about Paolo, and it's and purely really talking about his methods and the sort of science behind what he was doing, and the relentless drive to be a champion. Even now, obviously Fabrizio's gone off and had his own coaching career over in Italy.
Yeah.
But even now, he's very, very quick to jump on Twitter and lambast anyone that sort of essentially as a swipe at Paolo. Or, I mean, there was a time where he misinterpreted something that I put to him in a tweet that sort of suggested that, Paolo treated him like an underling, and he was very, very quick to jump on that and go, that actually wasn't the case. Now, I don't know whether he was overly sensitive about that, or whether he was just, no, look, the guy really, really does know his onions. So, all right. So, obviously, he's had his one-to-ones with you, and then obviously you guys head off pretty soon after, don't you, for pre-season over in Italy? That's from
oh my god.
There's an awful lot of. There's a lot of sci-ferry content out there about this pre-season trip to Italy. Was it really as bad as it sounded?
Oh, it was horrendous. It took us a pre-season to actually get to the place. Honestly, we went on a flight, I think we flew to Rome or something like that, and we were then easy between 3-4 hours away up the fields, away up the mountains in the middle of nowhere. And that was us planked there for 2 weeks.
Blimey. There was you've gone right up in the mountains. There must have been altitude issues and things like that as well. That must have been part of his thinking. So,
yeah, it probably was, to be honest. Yeah.
So you get how quick did you guys realise that this was going to be? What were you over there for, Paul? Was it 2 weeks, or were you out there for a week, or
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Felt like 2.5 months.
How soon was it? Did it dawn on you that this was literally going to be 2 weeks from utter hell?
Yeah, pretty soon we got to the hotel. Well, I think it was a hotel. We were in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There was nothing round about us, and it was literally like, this is a camp of us for 2 weeks and only us. Saying that, I'll tell a lie, us and only us. But we turned up to the hotel and there was about 5 of the heaviest meatheads you'll ever see, the Canio's mates, that were covered head to toe in tattoos, clearly like doing the fascist handshake and stuff like that. We're thinking, wow, this is absolutely carnage. But listen, we went there for 2 weeks and we just run for 2 weeks.
So how much of that welcome that you got do you think was kind of mind games from Paolo? Because there were, I mean, it's interesting. He, I probably met him 3 or 4 times during his spell there. And I mean, he casts a fairly sort of scary shadow. But weirdly, I also found him. I often get asked about what it was like the times I did bump into him, and I kind of found him as being. I mean, the first time I met him, my son was his very first mascot at the Crew game, first game of the season.
Yeah.
And we got taken into his manager's office, and he was just. I was actually. It's fair to say, I was a little bit apprehensive. I thought, God, if he's literally like his reputation sees, it's not going to be very pleasant for me. I'm just going to stand there and smile and wave. But he was actually the nicest bloke you could have possibly imagined. He was letting my son adjust his tie. He was asking my son to tell him what he looked like. He was being really sincere and into it. But then I likened it, as soon as he kind of got near the chalk line, he just became the Paolo that you kind of know him to be from watching him over the course of his career. Now, clearly it's going to be different for you guys as players.
Yeah.
Did you see that kind of side of him? Did you ever see a softer side of him?
I think you must have got him in a good day, though.
Yeah.
No, I'm only joking. Definitely the first year. 100% the first year there was a lighter side to him. He was a bit more light-hearted. He was still tough, but you could still have a laugh and a joke with him. But it sort of changed the second year with stuff like that. But the first year, 100%, yeah, he had that bit in him where you could approach him and chat to him and stuff like that. But it was very much, I've said this 3 or 4 times already, it was very much his way or that was it, you were out. So you had to follow and everything he'd done and stuff like that. So, and that was, he wanted to live your personal life for you, he wanted to live your footballing life with you, he wanted to control your full life. That was the nature of him. That's just what he wanted to do.
So of that control, Paul, obviously there are a lot of people that will talk about, dictatorship sort of style of management and that kind of fear factor. You mentioned going back to the meatheads. Did you ever sort of get the impression that, these tattooed sort of bouncer types were there to kind of put the wind up you guys, as in, I really am someone to be afraid of? Or was there more to their presence there?
No, I genuinely just think that is the mates that he runs about with. There's no 2 ways about that. That's just a circle of friends. That's it. Like, he gave us a night out in Italy. I think must have been one of the last nights, and we ended up. We had to drive about 2.5 hours to go to this nightclub, mind you. But so we ended up at this nightclub, and it was me, Cy Ferry, might have been Matty Ritchie, and we ended up meeting those three of these 5 meatheads, and they were coming up to us saying, like, "Don't tell Paolo, we'll take you to this special place and all that." And we were like, "We can't go here. We'll end up getting murdered." So honestly, just like one of them had a big Verona tattoo right across his forehead. One of them had all the tear marks and stuff like that. And they were just living a different life from what we were, and we were thinking no chance. But then at the same time, Sai saying to me, "Should we go? What if we don't go? What if we don't go? They might take us in the back of a car and kill us." But yeah, that was just. I genuinely just think that's a circle of friends.
So okay, go back into the regime then of that pre-season training. I mean, Sai's been very open about the fact that he certainly became a lot fitter under Di Canio, and obviously he had his own sort of battles to win Paolo's respect, because he was very much out of the picture, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But did you? I mean, how much of a difference did that sort of 2 weeks make? Was that just pure cardio, or did you guys literally just shed pounds? Because you must have been sweating like Jesus.
So to give you an insight of how the day went, it was normally like up at say 7:30, we're out 8:30. I think we're out a first session, and it would be like running for an hour and a half. So we just do like, to be fair, like I'm saying running, but it was all controlled stuff. So it would be like, if you're to go around the pitch in a minute, we'd have like this little machine in our hands. So one person would hold like this little kind of trigger kind of thing, and it would vibrate every time you got to like 400 meters, for instance. And if you had to get 400 meters in say 45 seconds, it would vibrate on that 45 seconds. and the sports scientist was standing in the middle of the pitch with a computer, and he would read when each block of four, so it was like teams of four, each group would hit the 45-second 400-metre mark, and the canny would be running around the inside with one of the teams, and I promise you, if you hit that mark on 44 a second early, he'd go nuts. If you hit it on 46, he would go nuts. You had to time it perfectly to 45 because they believed in, like, this is how we're doing it, and this, I don't want you getting in early, I don't want you getting in late, there's no champions in this, we all go together, so everyone gets in 45, and it just kind of built that team bonding up, that robustness about us. But yeah, so in the mornings we'd do stuff like that, like structured running for an hour and a half, and then we'd go back, go in for lunch, we'd come back out, we'd probably do about an hour and a half to 2 hours of just pure shape, nothing else but shape. So we literally went to Italy for 2 weeks of running, shape, and then like a 11v11 game in the evening. So it was like 3 sessions a day, and it was running, shape, but the shape wasn't just like walking shape, it would be like he'd stand on one side with a cone and he'd shout like yellow, and the yellow cone would be in the left back area, so everyone had to sprint into shape if that was the ball, just stuff like that. And you could see throughout the season how much that genuinely did help us.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, because by the end of the season, I mean, taking out Gillingham and Aldershot, I mean, it was a really finely oiled machine. I think anyone that was watching the side that season would say the same thing. So I mean, put yourself in my shoes then, Paul. There's been various kind of pre-seasons where, you know, I've come back and I'm out of shape now. I'm not a professional athlete, but to what extent was that kind of sort of step change in training affecting you guys with, for example, your bloody lactic acids and all this stuff? I mean, was there a notable impact on you guys? Were people struggling to keep up with those sessions?
Yeah, but I think the 2 weeks in Italy was to build. We thought going over there for 2 weeks it was horrible, but in the Canio's mind, we now know that was him just building us up for what was to come for the next 5 weeks in England. Yeah. So that was like I'm going to get used to a base, and I want everybody to be at the same base. And then when we get base fitness, I mean, when we get back to England, we're going to ramp this up a bit, and that's exactly what it done. So yeah, of course there was strugglers, 100% there was, but I can assure you by the end of that 2 weeks, we were all at a level of like equalness. There was no one that was any fitter than anyone else. There was nobody that was struggling. He just managed to find everyone, and that's down to the fitness coach. The fitness coach, I think, the Canio brought him in from Lazio first team, believe it or not. So he was like top at his job. He was unbelievable. That's what I mean when I'm talking about he's not wanting anybody to get in, because you do, you know, it's like you do runs and you have to be in 45 seconds. You'll get the busy ones that are in 38, and then you'll get the ones that are not really bothered that are in 47. And they don't want that. They want everyone getting in 45. So he'll be as angry as somebody getting in 3 seconds early as he will be 3 seconds late. And that's the mindset they had.
Yeah, he wanted a fit collective.
Yeah.
Paul, how do you feel about Charlie's requested jumping on and asking you a question? You happy to take a question?
Yep, sounds no problem.
All right, Charlie, I'm just going to add you as a speaker, mate. Hopefully we can get this set up and working. Charlie, you're on, mate. Make sure you turn your mic on, Charlie.
Charlie's fell asleep,
I think Charlie's fell asleep. Charlie, you're on with Paul if you want to ask him. Oh, he's disappeared. All right, Paul, we'll crack on. Okay, so you said about coming back, and then you sort of like, you know, your next 5 weeks, if you will. Did he, when we say about ramping it up, I mean, take us through that, Paul. What exactly did that mean? I could only, my mind boggles.
Yeah, so ramping it up was back home in Swindon. So we were in every single day for the full. We actually didn't get a day off till at the end of October from the first day of pre-season. But anyway, we were in every single day. So it would be Monday would be in again. We'd do 3 sessions a day. We'd do maybe 9:30 till 11:30 at Liddington at the time we were at. And then we'd go back to the stadium and have about an hour and a half lunch. We'd come back out midday, like from 2 till 3:30. Do more like so instead. So the further on in pre-season you go, obviously the runs will get shorter, so you start to get sharper. So it'll be more sharper runs. It'll be 400 metres, 300 metres, 200 metres, 100 metres. So it'll be like that kind of stuff in the afternoon. And then I'm saying kind of like tea time from about 3:30 to about 5:30. We'd do a lot of on-pitch stuff. So it'll be shape, possession drills, how he wanted to set up, how he wanted to play, and that was like every single day for 4 months, maybe.
God, I bet it. Yeah, you didn't get many days off, mate.
No, we didn't. We didn't, and even during pre-season, we'd play a game on a Saturday. We'd come back in on the Sunday, and he'd be like, "It's pre-season. I don't care if you played yesterday. We're doing a normal session." So you do a normal session. Even when the season or mid-season, we were still doing. We were doing sessions on a Sunday that some teams would do on a Monday that hadn't played on a Saturday, and that's genuinely because we were at that level of fitness, we could cope with it. So we were doing like box to box runs as a cool down, whereas a lot of clubs will do that as a fitness session. So wow. that's just the level of fitness that we were at. But it's the fittest that, like, I know that's Size went on record saying it, and Matt Rich is the same. It's the fittest we have ever been. It took us to a level that we didn't think we could ever get to. Collectively, that was a scary thing.
Realistically, though, Paul, like that, I mean, obviously, it's very, very easy when you're watching professional footballers from the stands for fans to sort of like turn on that tunnel vision and almost forget that you are just like, you've got lives away from the game. Yeah. It's like everyone else. Like, what was the real impact of that on not just yourself, but obviously the way? I mean, you don't have to mention names, but
no, of course,
impact on the wider squad. You know, because you've all got, you've got partners. You've got home lives, you've got kids, etc. And I know, obviously, for you personally, further down the line that became an issue, particularly. But what was the knock-on effect for that? Like, was there a sort of like very noticeable issues developing for some of the lads?
The first year there wasn't, because there wasn't many of us that had kids in the first year. We all seem to, that's maybe why we ended up having kids later on that season, because we never got to see our missus. Do you know what I mean? You get back home and you had to reintroduce myself about 4 times that season. But we all ended up having kids at the end of that year. But yeah, initially it was all right. But no, listen, you're spot on though. We have private, like we've got social lives, we'll have private lives. We'll never out the door, to be honest. We're going home absolutely shattered. Si lived with me for about 6 months. Si and his partner moved in with me for about 6 months, and about 3 months into that, I had the first 3 months of that, I had Rafa, Davita and Matthias staying with me as well, because it just moved over fertily. So I invited them in, and they'd stayed with me, my missus, Si, his missus, all in my house. So we were all just going home and going to sleep. It was madness. But yeah, listen, that's the part that I said earlier on, that he wanted to control that, and he knew by giving us tough sessions, giving us long days, it shortens the day for us when we go home and what we can possibly do. So we're going home, having dinner. There might be a game, a pre-season game on that night or something. We'd watch that, we'd go to sleep, and then we're like robots. Just eat, train, sleep. And that was it for months.
So how were you feeling in those pre-season games, Paul? Were you feeling that fitness, or could you feel like, because obviously it's like whenever you go to the gym, they tell you, build up slowly, like don't go nuts with it. And obviously you painted a picture that Paolo was very scientific about it, so clearly he knew what he was doing. But were you ever concerned going into the sort of pre-season games themselves that, look, your calf's going to give out, or you're going to have an issue with your Achilles or your hammy or something like that?
No, I was always all right, to be honest. We just had the mindset it's pre-season. If that happens, that could happen to any club. Like it's pre-season, you're just getting back into it. My mindset started to change a little bit after the first 4 or 5 games, and we had only won 1 in 4 or something, and 1 in 5, and you're thinking, surely this has got to come good. We've got to be fitter than everyone. And then in the same hand, you're thinking, but we can't be too far behind everyone, because fitness won't just get us there in the end. So, but yeah, after the first 4 or 5 games, it was obviously a bit worrying. We didn't start too well and stuff like that. But no, I was going off the pre-season games. We just put it down to, listen, it's pre-season. Our touch might not be there. We might not be feeling as sharp, but we always had that base fitness in us that we knew that would stand us in good stead for the start of the season coming.
Yeah, and obviously, so, I mean, the season gets off to an absolute flyer, first game of the season. But before we get on to the Crew game, which was like an absolute blitz, I mean, it was a joy to watch.
Yeah.
There was the captaincy issue was always fascinated me, because obviously he's brought Ollie Risser in from literally nowhere. I've never heard of Risser, and I think I wasn't the only Swindon Town fan.
Sorry, see before you finish there, just going on off Ollie Risser, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick one. So the Canios pulled me and said, this year we do this, but you can play. I'm going to bring Risa in, right? So I was like, nah, he can't be bringing John Arne Risa in. So I went home that night, right, and I've said to Si, keep this between me and you. Gaffer's just told me he's signing John Arnorisa. He's like, no, mate, no chance. I was like, honestly, I think he was about 35, 36 at the time, and we were just thinking, is he mates? Is he coming because he's the Cannibals mate? We genuinely believe we were getting John Arnorisa and we ended up with Olorisa.
Yeah, just a bit of a difference.
Yeah, massive difference,
But then, having said that, I mean, obviously, there are some very, very well-known stories of what Rissa's pre-match routines and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to share?
So I used to do, obviously, I think it's John. Is it Johnny Drama? Does it in? What's he in again? I can't remember the name of it. When he used to shout "Victory!" So Olorisa used to try and, well, he did for the first couple of games when he was captain, all in a huddle in the dressing room like 5 minutes before kickoff, and he would shout "Victory!" and then we were all to shout "Victory!" But I wasn't having this at all. I'm not into stuff like that. I just tell myself, if you can't get yourself up for a game of football yourself, you're in the wrong game. So there's like 25 screaming, sweaty guys shouting "Victory!" in the middle of this dressing room before we go out and play like Crew at home, and I'm like, nah, I'm not having that. He loved it though. He was into all that kind of stuff.
Did Si buy into it, or was it very much tongue in cheek with Mr.
No,
Ferry?
but Si was so obviously me and Si are best of mates. So Si would deliberately stand at one side to face me and scream "Victory!" at me because he knew that, like, just as I wind up, and I had to try and because the Canio loved it as well. The Canio was like in the middle screaming proper passionate "Victory!" and there's me like trying to hide my laugh and thinking, fucking hell, what is going on in here?
Yeah. So obviously you're watching. So we talk about Ollie Rissa. You're watching Rissa in training, and from what I understand, talking to some of the other lads from that squad, it was fairly clear that he had his limitations. But first, we don't move on to the first game of the season. I mean, what must you have thought when he laces home an absolute rocket?
No, I thought I had concussion. I'd have took him off with concussion. No, honestly, there was one where we're doing unopposed shape. So for those that don't know what I mean, it's like we're basically doing 11 players will just pass the ball about the pitch with no opponents at all. So it was just like phases of play, passing it from one side to the other. And Olorisa's got this ball off Si and turned out and zinged it, and it's hit the Canio right in the back of the head. Honestly, like no pressure at all, nothing. The Canio stand in front of him, and we'd all think, "Oh my God, this is it. He's going to kill him here." But nah, he was all right. But that just summed him up, like unopposed possession and smack somebody in the back of the head.
Well, listen, Paul, I'll tell you a funny story about the first game of the season, which I think Tyler knows this story. I was going to get my little boy to come in and tell you. Well, I say little, he's nearly 18 now.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned to you, he was Paolo's first mascot.
Right.
And he's got brilliant Ollie Rissa story. And I was watching it from up in the stands, and I was just like, I was creasing up. And you saved the day, and I don't know whether you'll even remember doing it. But basically, Ollie's led Archie out, holding his hand, comes out the players' tunnel. And Archie's like, oh my God, as you'd imagine at the time, I think he was only like at 4 or 5. And he's looked up and like, obviously it's a fairly busy day. It weren't packed, but it was a fairly busy day. All the fans are cheering and all the rest of it. And you boys are all resplendent in your red and white. And the whole sort of day is really getting to him. And I'm just like, I just hope that we don't see tears. I'm hoping he's one of them good mascots that he leads him out, no problem. And so Ollie takes him out and he lines him up, and you're all lined up there and you're facing the Arkle stand. And you have to go to start doing the old handshake, and Ollie completely forgot that Archie was there. He was so swept up, and he walked away. And you ended up you took Archie's hand and led him down the line. And your face was an absolute picture because you blatantly could see what happened there.
There you go. That sums the guy up. Doesn't know his ass with his elbow.
He was so pumped up that he left the mascot there. But anyway,
I think he was crying that day he scored as well. I'm pretty sure he was crying.
Oh, yeah, he scored well, like I said to you, I mean, he scored an absolute rocket, didn't he, at the start of the season? And then obviously we go on. I think it was Flinty gets one, Cal Kellendy gets one. Yeah. Blew him off the park that day.
Yeah.
I know it was Billy got one, didn't he? It was Billy Bowden.
Yeah, we both would, no.
So coming off the pitch that day, off the back of your pre-season, you've completely blown Crew off the park. What were you guys? Were you sort of the impression that either we've got this in the bag, or was it? What was the vibe in the dressing room?
Nah, 100%. We come in thinking this league's by April. By Christmas, sorry. We were
Yeah.
thinking, wow, we're flying here. Like, did Crew just get relegated, or were they already in League Two? I can't remember anyway, but I think Crew were quite well thought of that year as well. When I thought, we're unbelievable, we played some great stuff. I just remember everything was perfect. Like, it's a nice sunny day, it was busy, it was obviously the manager's first home game, atmosphere was good, some unbelievable goals, just such a good feel-good factor, and we just thought, something's brewing here, like, we're going to be flying. And then the next 4 or 5 games happened.
And then it all kind of went a little bit pear. I remember, so I ended up going off on holiday, and I remember being sort of like quite pumped, like you, thinking, well, not being funny. I mean, looking down our lineup, I mean, almost like, I mean, we didn't know much about Matteo Lanzano in goal, but 1 through to 11, you were going, but these guys have all got pedigree. You know, we've just been relegated. We've got some real quality in the squad. Yourself included. You're looking through that squad, thinking far too good for this division. We know you've been beasted in pre-season, so you're going to be peak fitness. And then, as you say, we just go on this god awful run where we just couldn't buy a win. So what? Obviously, you've gone from this Leeds finish till Christmas. You've got your fitness up through the roof. You got Paolo on the sideline as manager, just punting fear inside you, like you win at all costs. Yeah. What starts to go through your mind and the players' minds when you hit in this run where you just can't buy a win?
Oh, it's difficult because I think, was it the first one we got beat? I think might have been away from home, and we're starting to think, are we just going to be one of those teams that are comfortable at home where we can pass it and have it all our own way, and then you start losing another one, then another one, you lose a home game, and you think, what's actually going on here? And I think we then seen after 3-4 weeks, even at the start of the season, listen, that this squad isn't quite strong enough, and I think the manager's seen that as well, to his credit, and brought some more like homegrown players, so to speak, in. Obviously, he also brought in big Alberto Comazzi as well, who was actually a decent player, but just wasn't quite up for the level, and I think the style of English football kind of surprised him a bit. But yeah, listen, it's difficult. Listen, at any stage of the season, you start losing games of football, 3, 4, 5 games of football, you think, what is actually going on here? But they kind of just continuously pass the same message on, obviously getting angrier week by week when we're losing games, but just asked us to follow them and trust them, and it's exactly what we've done. And I think the next game, if I remember right, we won was the Rotherham at home on TV. Big Comazzi, I think, gets sent off. O'Connell scored the winner, or something like that. We won. Well, down to 10 men, I think. We won 2-1 or 3-2, I think. As always, Big Rev scored. He always scores against us, doesn't
he?
Always. I think he scored as well that day. So, yeah, I think we went 4 or 5. You might be able to tell me better. 4 or 5 where we lost.
Yeah,
was it?
Yeah, we lost 4 in a row, and then beat Rotherham after going 2-1 down. Alan Connell really late on scored the winner. Yeah,
you're right. Big Comazzi gets sent off, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Of course he did.
Yeah.
So, and not just, obviously, part of that losing run as well was to that horrible yellow mob up the road. And clearly Paolo you could tell by the way he was approaching that game that he, obviously derbies for him, he wanted to make an impression. That day, I remember him looking immaculate, and he was absolutely losing his bananas on the touchline, wasn't he? Absolutely. Yeah. What was the? But I mean, clearly, for that was big for us as well. I mean, we've not in recent times. I mean, clearly now we've got. You're on a show that's named after Tom Broadbent, so you'll know just how important winning those games are. But what was the? What was the vibe after the Oxford defeat at home? Because obviously they were really giving it to us. There was a big crowd that day in the middle of that horrible run. It must have been quite difficult to just trust the process as Paolo.
Yeah, it was.
When everyone's turning on you.
I'm trying to think back to the game again. I think we actually played quite well, did we not?
Yeah, we did all right.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we were the better team. But yeah, it was just frustrating. Obviously, the first thing you're frustrated for is obviously supporters, because you start bragging rights and you want to get one over your rivals. But listen, who got the last laugh? We went up and they didn't. So, but yeah, listen, of course, the first thing you think of is the supporters, and you're frustrated. You're pissed off that you didn't beat your rivals. But there was a bigger picture.
Yeah, there was. And the results did start to turn around quite quickly. As Tyler was saying, obviously, off the back of that run, we pick up a decent result, obviously, against the odds at Rotherham. An absolute thumping at Southend. And I wanted to dwell on that Southend game because it was the first goal in a Swindon shirt for Mehdi Karouch, who was quite a character, wasn't he?
Yeah, Mehdi was a good player, by the way. He was just a typical, was he Albanian, Mehdi? I think he was Albanian. Just a typical, like, Albanian, so to speak. Like, we all know what Albanians like. They're just mental. Like, he was just like that. He'd be like, we'd go to hotels on away nights, and you'd just get this like strong smell of smoke. You'd be like, what the hell is that smoke? And you look out your window, and there's Mehdi hanging out his window with a lighter in 20 Club, smoking away.
So he literally, the song was Karouch is on fire, and he pretty much was after time on the pitch.
He had every hotel on fire. But yeah, no, he was a good character. He there's a story actually about him as well, just touching on him with Etienne Sajas. Remember him?
I do, yes.
Etienne. So those two were quite close, and obviously Etienne was close with Leon Clark, which we all know what happened there. So literally after that spat with Leon Clark, we never seen Etienne again. So Etienne got the blame of that literally because he was his mate. So anyway, Mehdi became mates with Etienne, and so Mehdi fell by the wayside as well for that reason. But last game of the season, we're obviously collecting the medals, and everyone was going to be there. So Di Canio had decided that the ones that weren't playing had to come in club suits, and he told all the ones that weren't involved in the squad, make sure you come in club suits. So everyone turned up in club suits, but he got someone to tell Mehdi and Etienne to wear tracksuits, and he told the people, the stewards at the front, if any of the players turn up in tracksuits, I don't want them coming in. So he deliberately done it because he didn't want them anywhere near the place. So that was just the mindset.
And it was interesting. Karouch's sort of end at Swindon Town as well was interesting because talking about the rivalry with Oxford, and then obviously where does Paolo pack him off to? Were you guys? Were you of the opinion that was done deliberately as well, or was that just?
I think it's just one of those ones that Canio couldn't care where he went. He just wanted them out of the place. That was literally it. Just get him out of the place. I don't want him anywhere near here. So I don't think there was anything deliberate on that. Just get him out. I don't want him near, and that's genuinely what it was like. If you crossed him in any way, it'd be like there was no way back. Like, you're gone. That's you, finished. And he would just literally take you off his board in his dressing room, and he wouldn't want to see you again. He'd done it with so many players.
And it was bonkers as well with Karouch, wasn't it? Because he was odds on to end up that season being top scorer, and probably by quite some as well. I mean, he was on when he fell out of favour with Di Canio. I mean, I think he was already pushing double figures. I'm sure, Tyler, you'll probably correct me on that, but I'm sure Karouch was pushing double figures, wasn't he, at the time that he got bombed out?
Yeah, he definitely was. I mean, speaking of him, I've got his mug on my desk that you gave me, Mark, and it's just it keeps my pens in all the time. So I'd love that bloke. Algerian wonder.
Algerian, sorry, not Albanian, Algerian.
Paul, we don't. I drink coffee out of my Paul Caddis mug. Very rarely does coffee see the inside of my Mehdi Karouch mug these days. I mean, and you talked about, interestingly, Assayas as well. I mean, I was going to come on to it a bit later, but he really did have a sort of bomb squad there, didn't he? I mean, it was very obvious on the party of the pitch that Etienne Assayas was like persona non grata. And you mentioned, I mean, Alberto Camazzi ended up sort of exiting stage left quite early, but you had Coxey, you had Ibrahim Atiku, if I recall.
Oh, what a guy.
Hardly saw any football, but I'm reliably informed. One of the nicest guys you could wish to be.
Yeah.
Mattia, obviously, I mean, clearly Mattia seemed to be number one before Big Wes comes in. And then once Mattia's out the picture, he really is out the picture, isn't he? As he ends up in the bomb squad.
Mattia was doing laps in the training ground. He's the only goalkeeper I've ever seen that's been told to do laps because he's not fit enough.
But that must have been difficult for you guys to watch. I mean, I think it was the Hereford game, the 3-3, where he was really badly exposed by sort of that lower league approach.
Yeah,
where big balls into the box, and he was just getting sort of hopelessly sort of caught out. But that sort of, I mean, talk about professional pride. You guys you've been away, you've done pre-season together. I mean, those lads that end up in the bomb squad, with the exception of Coxey who comes in later. But you've all trained together. That must have been sort of quite difficult professionally.
It's horrible. Honestly, it's absolutely horrible because you become mates with these guys. You spend, under the canal, we spent like 4 or 5 months every single day with these same people. Yeah. So you become mates, and obviously I touched on there that Mattia and Rafa came and lived with me for 3 months, so they were like my brothers basically for 6 months. Like, so you do become proper mates with them, and Mattia was a young lad. He was away from home. He was a proper emotional guy. Like you could see he was getting upset, and it was really getting under his skin. But such a nice guy, and yeah, it was a shame, and that does hurt a little bit when you see those boys getting bombed off, and you think, why bother? Like, sometimes we'd play with a man less just because the stubbornness of not bringing one of those lads into the squad, into the training pitch to make it even numbers and stuff like that. It's just, yeah, it's difficult. Listen, I ended up there, but it is difficult.
So Paul, results. I mentioned Hereford. I mean, and that sort of like sits as amongst a run of sort of improving results. The team's starting to sort of like hit their stride. Then Hereford comes along. As you say, Matai gets bombed out, and then enter a young man who nobody really outside of probably Fulham has ever heard of, in Wes Foderingham. Was it immediately obvious to you in training that this guy was a very, very different beast to what we'd had between the sticks up until that point, or because obviously very, very young goalkeeper. Speaking as a defender, I'm kind of guessing that you're probably, especially in League Two, sort of probably going to favour a slightly more experienced sort of older keeper behind you off the back.
Yeah, but if you look at that squad, Canio didn't work with any like older experienced players. I don't think he liked that challenge of an older experienced player might bring him. He done it with Komatsu, and it didn't really end that well. So after he had gone, he never really. I think the most experienced that year might have been later on in the year would have been obviously Paul Benson, but that wasn't to start with. So listen, Wes was unbelievable. We knew from day one, and Wes is probably one of two goalies, along with played with Tommy Kushak at Birmingham. But Wes was always the one where if anyone ever got behind the back four, I always thought he's not scoring. Wes will save this, and he was just so good. It was like so good to play with. Like, it's just that's it's like a relief knowing that you've got someone like that behind you. And yeah, I loved Wes. He was a good guy as well. He was a proper nice lad. Worked hard, done everything properly, and got his just rewards.
Yeah, and obviously went on an incredible run in terms of sort of keeping clean sheets, didn't he? I mean, an unbelievable run. I mean, how did he, as a sort of young lad and also a young goalkeeper, how did you see him adjusting coming in a little later in the season to sort of Paolo's training? Because I appreciate he'll have a goalkeeping coach, so he'll be away from the group, but I'm guessing Paolo would have had an eye on things like his fitness, and Paolo would have had an opinion on the fact that he's come in and he's not been prepared by Paolo. Was there any tension like that with Wes from the off?
No, there was always all right. Listen, sometimes that year I wish I was a goalkeeper and spent more time away from the Canio, but no, the goalie coach we had was very chilled. The complete opposite of the Canio was full of, like, as I said, I don't think I ever heard him speak, but he would always try and have a laughing joke through, like, things he would do, like try and deliberately trip you up and just stuff like that. So, and I think Wes got on with him really well because he probably was the opposite of the Canny. He was quite chilled, and that Wes was quite chilled. But no, he never ever struggled, Wes. I think the manager just let the goalie coach get on with it with Wes because he knew that he came from a decent club, he had a good background and stuff like that. But no, we never ever seen a problem with him, to be honest.
So did you? So obviously results are starting to roll. Like we mentioned, results are improving and whatnot. And like anything, football's always brilliant when you're winning. You painted a picture, Paul. Like you mentioned the word brothers in terms of the lads that were living with you, but you also sort of alluded to the fact that as a squad, you seemed like quite a tight knit group. Who were your strongest relationships in that dressing room? I mean, obviously your best mates with Si.
Yeah, of course. Listen, I think I was then made captain after a short time as well, which obviously I loved that role. I loved that responsibility, and I kind of tried to lead in the dressing room, try to help as much as possible with the foreign lads, try to do a lot of things off the training pitch to help them and stuff like that. So Like obviously myself and Si, Matty Ritchie. There was a group of us though that was quite strong. We'd go for coffees every Friday after the session, and maybe like, and you normally when you're in squads 4 or 5 would go, but we genuinely had like 10, 15 players that would be all sitting having a coffee before we went home, just talking about the game, talking about training, having a laugh. So it was like myself, Si Ferry, there was Big Flinty, Joe De Vera, Matt Ritchie, Wes, Al McCormack came for a bit as well, Alan Connell, Paul Benson in the end up. Proper strong, good characters. But yeah, it was a great dressing room. I had a great dressing room.
So how do you avoid, Paul? So we spoke to Charlie Austin a couple of weeks back, and Charlie was talking about the cliques that formed in the season before this.
Yeah.
And how that was obviously really damaging. How do cliques form in dressing rooms? How did you guys avoid that from happening? Was that lessons learned for you from the previous year, or because I've often, because you probably don't know this, Paul, but I came up and watched you guys train the season before, and the cliques were really obvious. Just to a layman stood on the touchline watching you guys. I was watching like a lot of the warm downs. You were seeing little groups of 2 and 3, and you could see the conversations were all very insular. And it's little things that you look at people's eye contact, and you know, like not saying goodbye to certain people, and this, that, and the other. You see the cliques were there. So how do they form, and how did you avoid them forming? I guess.
Yeah. Listen, first and foremost, you put 25 guys in a dressing room, they're naturally going to connect with people. It's just how they then connect with others in different ways, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, if you go that year we get relegated, the cliques were obviously quite strong and evident. You've seen it yourself with your own eyes. And but if you look the season before when the club done really well, no one would talk about cliques because you're doing well. And then the year we went up, there was no cliques because, again, we were doing well. So it's such a blame game in football. Like everybody will go, oh, if it's not the manager, so why did the manager bring that player on? Or it'll be a group will say, I shouldn't have brought him on. He's hopeless, or he gets away with everything. But I think that the way we approached pre-season, where we literally looked like left and right, and you could see everyone was dying that first 4 or 5 weeks, and all we had really was each other. So we had no room for cliques because we're just all this one big team that just had to work together. And it was almost like, I don't know if the Canio does it deliberately or not, but it's like as if the Canio was trying to, I'll be honest, I think it was deliberate. I think he was trying to drive us against him, if you know what I mean, to make us stronger. So it'd be like he'd be constantly on us. So we would then go into the dressing room and be like, listen, don't listen, just keep going. We're doing all right. We're doing this, we're doing that. And like me as a captain at the time, I remember trying to like not contradict him, but play it down at times where he'd be like, this is shit. I'd come in and say, listen, lads, it's just, we know what he's like. He's emotional. Just keep doing what we're doing. We'll get there. And it's just trying to be like a good professional first and foremost. But it's very easy for me as captain to do it, but you need people to help you along the way, and that's exactly what we had.
So, and you mentioned Matt Ritchie being one of the lads that you got really well with. I mean, again, watching from the stands, and Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, you guys had almost like a telepathy down the right hand side that season. Given he was and it was unusual because he was a lefty on the right, but him cutting in and you overlapping, was that just something that you guys worked on? Was that something that just happened naturally?
No, listen, I had a great relationship with him first and foremost. I think that helps. Him and his missus we used to go out for food and stuff like that as well. So we first and foremost had a good relationship with him, which I say does help. But on the pitch, I just always knew that, listen, I didn't have the quality that Matty had. I didn't have the goal scoring ability that he's had and how he's a match winner. But I knew what I had to help him, and I was basically Matty's eyes and ears. And he used to say to me all the time that it was the game, the final I didn't play against Chesterfield, and he said to me straight after, I missed my eyes and ears. Like, and he admittedly said that he struggled that game because he just needed me to say, close right, Matty, close left, Matty, up, Matty, inside, Matty, go on, Matty, take him on, I'm round you, Matty. Do you know what I mean? He just needed that, someone just to constantly talk to him, or he would just go on this, like, ill-disciplined positional sense. Like, he would just start drifting, and I used to just be his eyes and ears, but he was so much more than that for me. he would work so hard to come back. He would work. I knew when he was going inside that he would either shoot or he would cut it back down to me. So that was my time to go. And no, we just worked together all the time in training. It wasn't, listen, these things happen through practice, and I think we obviously had a strong relationship with Sai as well. And some of the stuff that, like, I know, listen, you might say it'd been great to watch, but it was even better to play. And just knowing that I could bounce the ball into Sai, knowing that he'll look after it, Matty will get it, Matty could put an unbelievable cross in. If he doesn't do that, he'll make the right decision, he'll score a goal, he'll put me down the line. I'll play a shank cross in that somebody will score. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it was just telepathic at times. It was brilliant to play in.
Honestly, really short.
You are selling yourself a bit short there, Cads. Hey, listen, I mean, there's one goal, I tweeted it earlier today. Do you have any memories of the goal against Gillingham that Matty scored? The absolute rocket from about 40 yards.
Yeah. Was that the one Roon scored the winner as well?
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah. I remember it cut inside, yeah. It was left foot in the faraway corner, was it?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you had ended up in the 18-yard box, hadn't you? Like, you were so, I could be completely wrong, but you were so well advanced.
Might be right. Yeah.
And I seem to remember you.
No, you're right. Yeah,
you were appealing for a handball.
Yeah.
And the ball's come back out to Matty, and you guys have all then drifted back on side, because I think you knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And he's unleashed a shot that almost defied the laws of gravity, because it left his foot. It literally has gone just sort of like crossbar height and stayed that way. I think if the goal wasn't in the way, it literally it would have just carried on, mate. It would have gone up there.
Yeah, some of the things he done that year was unbelievable. And listen, it couldn't happen to a better guy that's went and had an unbelievable career and played in the Premier League and stuff like that. He's an unbelievable guy. He works hard. He does everything right, and he fully deserves where he is.
Do you think we'll ever see him back in red and white?
Honestly, probably not. Cause he's a massive Pompey fan. I think he'd love to finish at Pompey. Just back home, like that's where he lives and stuff like that. But you never know. Never say never. But obviously back up where the how now. So watch this space, maybe in a couple of years' time.
And we'll talk about another player I think you had a good relationship as well, was Alan Connell. Now, I'll tell you what, I lost count that season the number of times where I was literally cringing when Paolo hauled him off after a silly amount of minutes. I mean, what was that like for you lot on the pitch?
Yeah, I was, and listen, you think I've called everybody in it, but Al was genuinely such a nice man. Like, he's the kind of guy that you wouldn't mind your daughter coming home with. Do you know what I mean? He was such a nice human being. Like, no one would ever say anything bad about him. He would never say anything bad about anyone. But yeah, he was getting hooked off a lot, but he scored quite a lot of important goals as well. So fair play to him. Like, he managed to hang in there. He another one who worked hard. He was another one that was part of that group. Was a good pro, good character. But yeah, I knew how Al played. He wanted the ball in the box. That was simple with Al. He never, like, if you got the ball into Al outside the box, the first thing we do is take a touch and try and get it wide, because he wanted a cross in the box. He thrived off crosses, and he loved the fact that obviously if I went down, I would try and cross it, and Matty would cut inside. He would cross it to Cal Kennedy and whoever else on the other side.
So to what extent did you think, because I used to suspect this, Paul, and I could be completely wrong, but I used to suspect that Paolo was almost using Alan Connell as a punch bag to get under all of your skin, to ensure that, look, I'll bring these people, I'll bring him off whenever. And it was just the relentless substitutions of Alan Connell as well, like first-class substitutions of him. It was almost like, I remember one game, I can't remember who the opposition was, but I literally rolled back in my seat, turned to the guy next to me and went, Paolo's literally got no shame. He's he's singling this guy out. And you were hearing words like the guy's being bullied, like pretty heavy language. But Alan seemed to take all that in his stride, didn't he? Like, I mean, he always shook his hand when he came off. He never seemed to complain. Do you feel that improved Alan's game? And indeed, what did that do for his confidence when these things were happening? Like, what was the story behind the scenes, Paul, to him being pulled off? What was being said to him in the dressing room by Paolo?
To be honest, I can't really remember that much. I don't think it affected him too much. He was probably that nice and that stupid in the head that he probably didn't even realise what was happening. But no, I don't think he was affected too much. But he, as I said, he scored important goals for us. But no, sorry, I can't really remember back too much. Obviously, it was a long time ago. Like,
Yeah.
I would clearly remember if it was affecting him a lot, but he was an important player for us, and I think the Canny was as strong on as Alan as he was everybody else. There wasn't any like, I'm just on Al all the time. He would be on everyone, but yeah, listen, you can understand how that would come about if he was constantly getting taken off. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the Canio made 3 substitutes in every single game.
Yeah.
Every single game. And he told us that from day one as well. I want a squad, I'll always use 3 subs. And he stuck by it. 3 subs every single game, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. So, another incident that you mentioned earlier, you mentioned that obviously what happened with Leon Clark. Now, I remember when we signed Leon Clark, that was huge news for me the day that broke, because obviously he'd come down the divisions from QPR. That was a big name, and you mentioned about you don't think Paolo was necessarily up for managing sort of more experienced pros, but I don't think Leon was that old, was he? I think he was what, 26, 27, I think, maybe 28. Was that part of was there any sort of simmering tension in relation to that upon his arrival, or was it just that Leon was just, again, he hadn't benefited from that level of fitness, because clearly that was the incendiary point, wasn't it? It was all a big conversation about fitness and running.
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest with you, it was brewing a couple of days in the lead up to it. It was just, Leon was such a laid back character that it came across as lazy, probably, because he was so chilled, so laid back, like Al Connell, but Al Connell didn't have that lazy body language about him. Al Connell would run about, stuff like that, but Leon was very chilled. He was literally a 6-yard striker. He wanted to score goals in the box, that was it.
Yeah. And
I don't think the Canio liked that, and so it was kind of building up that week. The Canio kind of lost the plot a bit in training about intensity and stuff like that, and I remember Leon Clark saying to him, "Why is everything so angry with you?" And we just thought, "Oh no, what have you done here?"
What, he actually called him out, did he, Paul?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But he had that in him, Leon. He was quite outspoken and stuff like that. And we were like, Jesus, this is not going to end well. So he's like, "Why is everything so angry?" And the Canio just went off in one, and it's kind of calmed down by the Friday or whatever it was, the Monday. It was a Tuesday night game, wasn't it? And then he's on his way off the pitch. And to be fair to Leon genuinely doesn't actually do anything wrong. I'll give him that. He didn't do anything wrong. The fitness coaches come straight on and went, literally, not even well played, nothing. The full-time whistle, "Tomorrow we have to run because you are not fit." That's what he said to him. And Clark, he's like, "Come on, geez, the game's just finished." Like, in that proper, like, Londoner, like, settled geez, the game's just finished. And the Canny was like, "Right, get in the dressing room, And Leon Clark's like, "But he's telling me I'm running tomorrow. Can we just wait till at least get in the dressing room?" And just one thing led to the next, and before you know it, it was absolutely carnage. Carnage in the in the tunnel. He's chased him down the tunnel. There's a door that you'll probably obviously know yourself, being in the stadium. There's a door that leads to where the gym is now, but if you keep going straight through that door, you end up in the away end. And I just remember like hearing all this shouting and screaming, because this went on for a couple of minutes. So all the boys were already in the dressing room. So we just heard like this commotion, and we're thinking, like, the game wasn't emotional. There was no like bust up at the end of the game with them. So it's clearly nothing to do with the opposition. We've looked out, and I've literally came out the dressing room, and Leon Clark came sprinting past. I'm thinking, Jesus, that's the fastest I've seen him move. So he's sprint down the tunnel straight through the Southampton fans. I've looked round. Southampton fans have kind of separated and just let him run through the middle of him. The Canio's chasing him. I'm thinking, wow, this is like fucking a scene out of Forrest Gump. Honestly, it was mental, screaming. So then the Canio's come in the dressing room. There's cups of tea sitting in the dressing room from the boys have made tea at half time or something, left 4 or 5 cups sitting there, bottles of water. There's like energy drinks, and the Canio comes in, rips his buttons open in his shirt, tosses the table upside down, tea flying everywhere. I'm thinking, Jesus, I'm going to have to wash this tracksuit tonight. He's going mental, and then he shouts, £300,000 we pay him per year. And I'm nudging Si Ferry going, fucking hell, he's on £6,000 a week. And it's like, trying to make a joke at it, and then the Canios just went off in one. And then we genuinely never seen Leon Clark again. And that's the last time that night we seen Etienne and Sajas as well.
Yeah, Yeah, it's funny you should say that because my overriding memory of that night, well, there were a few really, because the performance wasn't actually that bad against a very, very good Southampton.
Yeah, what was it? 3-2 was it?
Yeah,
Medi scored a free kick, didn't he?
Yeah, and
Late
the
on,
only I mean, it was a shame because obviously Clarkey had a really good chance that
Yeah,
clearly, you know, where he could have maybe popped an equaliser towards the end. And you could see the sort of like the way he connected with the ball, like his timing and whatnot. It probably wasn't just there, but in the stands, we were actually all quite forgiving because we were like, you know, he's obviously he's getting up the fitness. It's one of them things, a bit unlucky. I don't think it was a game we're expecting to win,
No.
irrespective of how well we were playing. But I was in the director's box that night, looking down at the pitch, and we obviously weren't aware of everything that was happening that you've just described.
Yeah.
But I do remember seeing Clarkey just emerge on the pitch, and then just crouching on the centre circle. And it looked like he was crying his eyes out. Like he was not a happy bunny. And then, as you say, Etienne Assayas just emerging out of the what because I was looking going, he must be mingling with the fans. And then he's come out of this obscure angle over near what used to be the old washing machines.
Yeah.
And he's stood on the halfway line talking to Clarkey, consoling
him.
It
was mental. Yeah. In fact, I tell you, that was the last night we seen him, but we went back out maybe about half an hour later for a cool down, and Clarkey was sitting over on the, I think it was a Don Rogers stand with just his gear on, and the boys were like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I can't go in there, he'll kill me." So that was him. They would finish, so he went in his car with his boots and everything on, went home, and Etienne took his gear and that, and then obviously that was the last we heard of Etienne as well.
Yeah, we just saw. Well, that was the thing. I think that night we saw Jeremy Ray come out and do. You know, he clearly was peacemaking, and there was a lot of understanding nods and whatnot. And then, as you say, so you never saw him again. Was he ever spoken of again? Really, Paul? Was it one of them where no, we just don't even go there because clearly, if Etienne's getting bombed out by apparently being a peacemaker, it was that a risky place to go in terms of even mentioning his name.
No, listen, it never really got there. It was. At that time, Etienne was part of the bomb squad anyway, so to speak. So we never really seen much of them. And listen, when you were in the bomb squad, you literally weren't in the bomb squad. You weren't to eat with the team. You weren't to change with the team. It was literally, you're not in my plans. I don't want you anywhere near the place. So it was kind of difficult to build a relationship up with Etienne because he was never really amongst the boys for that long. Same with Clarkey. Clarkey wasn't in that long either. So it was kind of just swept under the carpet, and you know how quick things move in football. You go and win the next game, and it's completely forgotten about.
Yeah. So moving on then. So I mean, okay, so a bit of a conversation here, Paul, about cup competitions, because obviously you mentioned the JPT. We'll come on to that, but clearly we had a couple of absolutely cracking sort of performances against Premier League sides that season. Yeah. The Wigan result, obviously a little bit unfortunate against the other lot in blue. But what was the I guess you're kind of thinking at that stage, Paolo's really coming good on his promises, isn't he, about having a good run in the cups? And but when you're going up against teams like Wigan, and you're really, obviously, you're turning them over and you're giving other Premier League sides a really good run for their money. What's going through your mind in terms of where this squad can go?
We were just literally like winning games of football also breeds confidence, but we were actually by then at the stage of who's next, we'll beat them. Right, tick that one off. Who's next, we'll beat them. Tick that one off. We're just going game by game at that point, so confident. You just think similar to like we were with Richie Wellens. It was like, who's next? Right, let's deal with them. Let's beat them. It wasn't like a disrespectful thing. It was like, we're confident we can, like, we were never, ever, ever under the cannon or Richie Wellens, hence why we went on and won the league. We'd never underestimate an opponent. So it'd be like, this is the most important one. Let's beat them. When that was done, Saturday at 5 o'clock, it was like, right, who's next? We'd never dwell on anything. So it'd be, right, we'll go to the next one. We'll beat them. We'll go to the next one. And we just kept ticking games off. And before you know it, you're like, we're absolutely flying here. He touched on the amount of clean sheets we kept that year, the amount of good performances we had. The squad was getting stronger, more confidence was coming through the squad, and we just became like a well-oiled machine that just, we weren't stopping for nobody.
Yeah. So what? But obviously you've got there are opposition, and then there's Premier League opposition. So is it like literally it's just that your attitude was they're just another team, like the level that they're playing at just doesn't really, it's just not bothered yet?
Yeah, it's probably not until the end of the season you actually look back and go, do you know what? We beat Wigan this year, like we were Premier League outfit. We were League Two. And by the way, deserved to beat them as well. We were decent. Obviously, the other cup runs we went on. But no, it was just that confidence of the next one. We went into that Wigan game fully confident and looking at like their team and thinking, listen, it's a quality team, but we're flying at the moment. We knew the fans would be right behind us, and we just wanted to. We always look at like every single stage of the FA Cup, and you think, right, the bigger teams are the first foremost. Let's not be the upset. And then for the teams like us at the time, it was like, do you know what? We're going to be the upset this week. We're going to do this. We're going to, and we just kind of, we deserve to win in the end up.
Obviously, massive crowd that Wigan game, and I was just going to pose this question to you, Paul, sort of bringing it up to sort of like, I mean, if you look at the sort of modern day or current day Swindon Town,
yeah,
I mean, we've just had another 10,000 crowd at the County Ground on Saturday. When you hark back to the Di Canio era, isn't it? Don't you think it's a little bit bonkers that we were playing the football we had the manager that we had the quality of team that we had, but the crowds were nowhere near what we're pulling this season. Do you have you got any thoughts on that, or do you know why that might be? Or
no, I don't know, to be honest. Maybe that year was the year that brought more people back, and they thought maybe the next year, like, you know, we're going to come back. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But obviously, listen, the fans have been obviously great this year again. But that year, I remember a few games were quite busy. But yeah, no, I think you're right. The away fans were always the ones. They were always like the proper right on it and noisy and stuff like that. But no, that's a difficult one to put my finger on, to be honest.
I think, I mean, personal take on it. I mean, Tyler, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think obviously the COVID issue, I think, has woken a lot of people up to what life looks like potentially, you know, and also the fact that the club nearly went pop in the summer.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe opened a few people's eyes to what actually life looks like without any football to follow. And so maybe it's shaking a few people out of their lethargy. I mean, you know, Tyler, you got any thoughts on that? Because obviously this season that we're talking about, sort of, you know, where we've won League Two, the first time for Paul. I mean, that was a hell of a season. You were young. That was your second full season as a fan, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So I got quite lucky with that one. But no, yeah, I think it's probably down to COVID and how we've all sort of gone through that 18 months of not having any football to go to and it all being a bit naff, and then we're able to go back and there's 10,000 every week at the County Ground now, and it's just like everyone's going there. Maybe not even for the football at this point. It's more just to feel a part of something where they haven't had that in such a long time.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I mean, we'll deal with current day Swindon Town and the last season, Paul, another time if we can get back on. But one of the other cup competition that I wanted to talk about was obviously the JPT. That must have been very, very hard for you to stomach, mustn't it? Missing the final.
Horrible. Captain as well, and yeah, that's probably my lowest. That's one of the only times I've missed a game of football in my full career. Another time I dislocated my shoulder, that just completely not a footballing injury. That's the only time I'd missed a game, really. I missed 5-6 games. I'd done everything I possibly could. I went to oxygen chambers. I was doing oxygen chambers for 3-4 weeks to try and speed up recovery. I had a steroid injection. It didn't work. I'd done everything right up until the boys were travelling down the Friday for the game on Sunday, and I just couldn't make it. I trained the Friday through gritted teeth and just done myself more damage, to be honest, just through trying my hardest to make it. But no, it was devastating, absolutely devastating. But I travelled down the Saturday with Jonah. Jonah who's a kit man just now. Was on the bus with his dad, with Mark, and travelled down with the staff and that. So it was a good day. But listen, I'll be honest, I was fairly disappointed that I wasn't involved.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it was an interesting, certainly from a fan's point of view, there were a couple of interesting team selections that day as well. Obviously, you mentioned earlier about that kind of, you know, losing the impact of you not being behind Matt Ritchie that day. And Matt certainly had one of his lesser games in a Swindon shirt. But Paolo also decided to introduce both Johnny Bostock and Jay McEvely that day as well, having sort of signed not not that long prior. Was that? I mean, it's like they didn't have any kind of time to acclimatise to the team. Were you surprised that they went straight in?
Yeah, I was. I think maybe the kind of was looking at Jay had obviously a little bit of experience behind him. Bostock had maybe a little bit of experience behind him as well, being just being at a big club and stuff like that. So I don't know if that was his thinking, but yeah, that was actually surprising. Definitely surprising, but I was never going to be the one that was going to tell him.
Yeah, for sure. Johnny Bostock was an interesting character, wasn't he? Obviously, certainly sublimely talented. What was he like as a personality around the club?
Yeah, fine, absolutely fine. As you said, very talented, really talented. Showed some unbelievable glimpses in training, but don't remember anything too major about him that would like any major bust ups, anything like that. And no, he was absolutely fine, John.
I mean, I think the interesting thing about John was that he'd been touted to make a big money move to Spurs, which then led to him falling out with Simon Jordan at Palace, and then led to this really sort of unusual nomadic career that he's had, where he said he's got obviously follows a very spiritual path.
Yeah.
Was that already coming to the surface at Swindon Town?
No, absolutely not. No sign of that at all. Nothing at all. Just I'm not saying it's abnormal, but just a normal, just like the rest of us, and involved in the banter and stuff like that. No signs of that whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I read a very interesting article on him recently. There's certainly nothing malevolent or unusual about, well, say unusual, I don't mean that in any kind of disrespectful manner. Yeah. He's, his attitude is he goes where he feels that he can go and have an impact and improve a club or, help people. And I think, it's pretty admirable. I mean, it's interesting that he went from probably 3 or 4 years prior being sort of touted to be joining Real Madrid, Barcelona. There was a big money bid from Tottenham that got turned down, and there he was leading both a cup campaign and a promotion charge from midfield for little old Swindon Town at the time. I mean, it certainly captured our imagination.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe De Canio turned him to God.
Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he did. So. All right, then. So, obviously, it doesn't work out, unfortunately, and our old nemesis, Mr. Sheridan, gets one over on us on the day. And then all eyes go back onto the league, and we start going for, the big final push. And now, at this stage, being honest, Paul, were things... Because you get the impression that Mr. Ferry was up to some of his hijinks towards the end of the season, but were things getting a little bit frayed towards the end of the season in terms of sort of, and I don't mean that in an angry way, but in more like a disciplined way, as in you guys started to take a few more chances knowing that the transfer window was closed and there was only so much that the gaffer was going to be able to do to damage the team. What because some of the results towards the end of the season were a little bit unusual, and some of the stories that have come out as well, Paul, particularly around Aldershot, were quite illuminating.
Yeah. No, listen, I'll be as honest as you want me to be. I'm always as honest and open as I can, and genuinely nothing strayed that time. It's just the one time, genuinely, hand on heart, the one time they went out, the idiots get caught. That was it. That was like, I think what made it worse was we played Plymouth. Did we play Plymouth away? I think we won. De Canio flew back to Italy. He'd lost his parents. I think it was his mum first, or his dad first, sorry, and had flew back. So it was Fabrizio was looking after us. So do you know what it's like? It's like school when your teacher's not in and it's the stand-in teacher and everybody's got that spring in their step and you're buzzing. The Canio's not in, so the boys end up going out this Sunday night and we play Aldershot on the Tuesday. And De Canio knew everything, right? De Canio could come in on a Friday before a Saturday game and we're playing Leyton Orient and could turn around and, for instance, say at the time Scott Cuthbert only trained Monday, Tuesday, he didn't train Wednesday, he didn't train Thursday, he didn't train Friday, he has a sore thigh, we destroy him. Like, he would know everything about other teams. So in Swindon, we were adamant. Listen, I don't know if Marie's still on. Marie could probably tell you better than us. He probably paid, I genuinely think he paid like bouncers and stuff like that in Swindon to give him the heads up if any of the Swindon players were out. Seriously, he could have never known that any of there was only 4 or 5 of them, I think, went out. And I don't know how he found out, but he found out everything. He used to have me in every Monday morning. Paul, why was Alan McCormack in Rendezvous Chinese on Saturday night. We have a game next Saturday. I'd be like, Gaffer, he's just going for a meal with his wife and kids 7 days before the next game. No, this is not the message. And I was in there every morning. It was just ranting and raving, and I got to the stage where it matured me, because I kind of just kind of gave him what he wanted to hear. But that's how it kind of went downhill with me in the caravan. I'm going off track here, but he wanted to know a lot more that was actually going on in the dressing room, and I done my best to protect it.
Right. Well, yeah, and I mean, it puts you in a very difficult position, doesn't it? Because
it did, but I would never ever throw anyone under a bus. Never do it. So yeah. I was willing to take what consequences came away. I wouldn't stitch my teammates up. The dressing room's the most important thing in the club, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I'll make you absolutely right. I mean, it was certainly, and there was I don't know if you remember, Paul, but there was a charity game for the air ambulance on the pitch.
Yeah.
And the opposing manager that day was Lou Macari.
Yeah.
And I noticed that. I mean, I was chuffed to be invited to be part of the squad that played in green and white that day, and we were managed by Lou. And I managed to see close quarters that there was a real interesting bond between Lou and Paolo. And Lou is fabled, as you may or may not know, but Lou's fabled at Swindon Town for his similar tactics. Yeah. So Lou knew what everybody was doing in Swindon at any time. Yeah. Like you say, he had his spies around, and obviously Lou was very, very similar to Paolo as well in terms of approach to fitness and that kind of regimented approach. But you could see that day that they were very kind of kindred spirits. But did that make Swindon a difficult place for you to live in then, Paul? Bearing in mind you want to have a social life, but
100%. Yeah, as I said, I'd come in on the Monday and it'd be like, Fabrizio would come in and say, Paul, the manager wants to speak to you. And it'd get to stage, I'm like, oh. So I would wait till Fabrizio walked out and I'd be like, right, lads, who was out on Saturday? Who went for a meal? Who went to Nando's? Who went to Rendezvous? Who done this? Who done that? And I'd get it all in my head before I went in and kind of set myself up for it. Can't have Alan doing this, can't have him doing that. And I got to stage like, Gaffer, we can't control what players do outside the dressing room. They're not going drinking loads of pints and getting pissed drunk. They're going for a Chinese meal with her. So it was just, it did become difficult because more and more as the season went on, he started wanting more and more involvement in private life. To be honest, he was trying to get in people's houses, literally, trying to tell, Paul Benson, for instance, when Benno came, Benno was the most experienced player, probably the most experienced player we had at the time as well. When Benno's wife was pregnant, and I think we had 8-9 games left when she was due. I think she just gave birth. So he's pulled Benno in and said, for the next 8-9 weeks, you cannot sleep with your wife, you cannot sleep with your baby. You have a hotel every night. And Paul Benson's like, whoa. With all due respect, Gaffer, I respect everything you're saying. I proper pro Paul Benson, great trainer, done everything properly, never stepped out of line. He's like, but my private life is for me to deal with, not you can't get involved in it. And that's kind of where it started, and obviously that feeds the dressing room, and we think, you can't do it. There's just some things you cannot do. And we just felt like some of them were those instances.
So you obviously mentioned the tragedy that Paolo went through, losing both his parents. Very, very close proximity. Now, I don't know whether you guys picked up on this, but I mean, if you look at the press photography on the day that Paolo was appointed, and then you compare it to how Paolo was presenting physically at the end of the season,
it's unbelievable.
He really went through it, didn't he? I mean,
he had a big. So in his office, he had a big portrait, literally, of the day. That must have been the day he signed. And he looks so fresh-faced, clean-cut, everything. And then, as you said, you see images 12 months later and you think, wow, that is proper drained him. It's aged him. It was obviously, the tragic, losing parents and stuff like that must be devastating. But I think it definitely took his toll in the end. I don't know if that's what happened for later on in the next season.
Did you guys have any impression that it was his relentless approach had that impact on him as well? as in he was putting so much into it that it wasn't just obviously what was happening in Italy, but
Listen, we spoke in the dressing room. We knew that he was doing too much. He would do the shape, but while 11 players were doing shape, he didn't want anyone else doing anything at all. So he would have the fitness coach just doing a warm up with other players. He didn't want any other coaches getting involved. He was fully in control. If players were going into the physio room, he'd be in saying, "Why are you in the physio room? What's wrong with you? No, you're fine. You're training." So it would be physio, it'd be manager, it'd be assistant manager, it'd be an analysis, it'd be secretary, it'd be chairman, it'd be owner, he's director of football. He'd done everything. When I mean everything, I genuinely mean everything. He decided what food we ate. So he just took too much on, I think, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, it was strange because obviously then he's had the other season with us, and I'm hoping that you come back on another time, Paul.
Yeah, of course.
Talk us through the other seasons that we've been through. But
yeah,
interestingly, when you saw him then take over at Sunderland, much further down the line, he was fresh-faced Paolo again, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It was like he'd had that recharge, and he was on top of the world again. And
we actually said when he took over Sunderland, the discussion in the dressing room straight away was literally. Well, I wasn't there at the time, but I was still in the group chats and stuff like that. I regularly speak to Matty and stuff like that. And he won't get away with what he done with us. Look, listen, there's no two ways about it. It's a job for us. We need the money. We're not in a financial position to say to him, do one. I don't care. Whereas these lads are on 70, 80, 90, 100 grand a week at the time. So they're financially stable, first and foremost. So there's no real defect for them. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. You're crazy. You can't tell me this. You can't tell me that. And I think eventually, obviously, the players went up to the owner, and what happened.
Yeah.
But listen, I sound as if I'm like batting Decano. Decano was an unbelievable football manager. Everyone asked me like, "Oh, you fell out with Decano?" The rest of it. Yeah, I did a disagreement with Decano. Yeah, that happens in football, but I have never once said he was a bad manager. He was an unbelievable football manager. He knew the game inside out. He was unbelievable to play for. He was so meticulous in everything he'd done, analysis. He knew the game. He knew from centre halves. He used to tell centre halves. He got to know the league better. He used to tell Flinty and Joe De Vera, head it and kick it. Don't want you doing anything. Head it and kick it. Give it to full backs. All the rest of it. So he was an unbelievable manager, but he should have just stuck to managing football. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, Paul. I don't get the impression at all that you're down on Paolo, and certainly it's interesting because if you follow a lot of the open goal stuff that Si does, similar story, and a lot. I don't think I've heard an ex-player that had a good run at it at Swindon and enjoyed success at Swindon turn around and dig him out. I mean, even Wes. Wes obviously had his problems the following season. But, Wes says exactly the same things about him, that, absolutely unbelievable character. I guess, the question I was going to sort of ask you was, to what extent do you think Paolo not working out at Sunderland was football's problem, as opposed to the way football's gone these days, as opposed to it being Paolo's problem?
Listen, I think 10% it would have been boys moaning about football, 90% it would have been boys moaning about other stuff than football. His football, his training and stuff like that, I know I said like half of us would go and do an extra warm up, etc. But his training was good, it was intense, and that's the way I was brought up at Celtic. Like everything was intense, everything was a high standard, and like we all bought into that. We loved it. Went to Sunderland, obviously got the great result against Newcastle, but I guarantee 90-95% of the problems that those lads would have had with the cannon would have been off the pitch.
Yeah, and that's I guess that's kind of the issue, isn't it? Really, in that they don't need the money.
Yeah.
But, from a football fan's point of view, you kind of want you sort of want the players to just, irrespective of the money, to buy into what it is he's trying to do, and I think that's maybe more about the players and their mindset and the modern era pro at the upper echelons of the game than it does Paolo.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But, like, just things like small things, like you'd be making a coffee and he'd be like, "No, you can't have milk," and you'd be like, so for instance, it happened at Swindon with Tommy Miller. Tommy, you can't have milk, and Tommy's like, "Gaffer, I've got a wife and 3 kids at home. You can't tell me I can't have milk in my coffee." He's like, "No, you cannot have milk." Just stuff like that, and like, if it's meant, honestly, you could spend hours and hours talking about it, but it was genuinely things like that, and he would not change whether it's Tommy Miller or whether it was John O'Shea. I think was the captain at the time at Sunderland. Whether it was John O'Shea, it doesn't matter if it was Olorisa. If Olorisa was to have dry chicken and pasta, then so was John O'Shea. It doesn't matter. Like, that's his way, and that's the way he sees it. But these guys, as I said, I know they could say, listen, let's just follow him, but there gets a point in life where these guys are comfortable. They want to just probably enjoy their football, and I understand that they're paid to respect their manager, and that's why I said 95% of it will be off-field issues.
Yeah. All right then, Paul. Well, listen. Obviously, we go on to lift the cup, and what an incredible day that was against Port Vale. I mean, the result itself was phenomenal. But what I mean, I know what the feeling would have been, but you put it into your words, mate. What did that actually feel like? Coming back onto the pitch, up onto the podium, lifting that trophy.
Oh, it was unbelievable what a day that was. I think it helped that we were probably the performance of the season. Arguably, would you say?
Yeah,
that game. So. We were absolutely brilliant that day. I remember the goal Benno scored that Size flicked round the corner. Benno stinked it over the goalie. I think Matty scored an unbelievable goal again that day. But just the build up, obviously again, you know, it's like in the sunshine and everything seems so much better. The place was buzzing. It was like a kind of carnival atmosphere. Everybody was buzzing. We knew obviously win the game, it makes it even better. But then just for me on a personal note, like I had been offered a new deal at Celtic, an extra 2 years at Celtic, but I was at an age where I wanted to take a risk and become a footballer. I wanted to feel like a footballer. I could have easily sat there at Celtic with the unbelievable facilities and all the rest. I wanted to take a risk, so I went to Swindon. So I seen Swindon as like my first proper time feeling as a footballer. Moved away from home, had my own place, had bills to pay, and like genuinely off field felt like a footballer. So for me to win, obviously getting relegated the first year was horrible. But then to be captain and lift a trophy for a club that went on, and obviously had a great relationship with, was on a personal note was unbelievable. And just to do it with that team as well, and those guys that were to this day, I still speak to quite a lot of them. But for all them to go out and then me to come out last, get that reception, it was unbelievable.
So was it at all awkward, given that you've had the armband off a volley? Was there any awkwardness in terms of lifting the trophy and all of that? How was he about it all? Was he sort of touchy about it?
The Canny will pull me in without. I don't think he'd spoke to Ollie, and I said to the Canny, listen, I want to speak to Ollie. So I went out my own way and I sat down with Ollie, I had a coffee, and I just said, listen, this is what the manager decided. It's nothing that I can do about it. It's nothing you can do about it. There's got to be no problems between me and you. I don't have a problem with you. And he was fine. He was absolutely fine. He was obviously devastated that he had it. There was never any awkwardness and anything like that. But I respected him. He respected me, and we just got on with it like teammates. And no, there was nothing untoward.
That's good to hear. Well, listen, whilst we've been chatting away, Paul, the questions have started coming in, which is good. If you're happy to field it.
Yeah, fine away, yeah.
So we've had this is from Paul, who's just been talking about. He's been thinking what you've been talking about with Port Vale has brought back a few memories. He said the performance that day was easily the best performance that he saw, and his favourite performance of that season. But what was your favourite performance that season? Was it fair to say it is Port Vale? If you're going to say yes, can you think of another one?
Yeah, I'll think another one. There was one I think Crawley were up there that year, weren't they? So under Steve Evans, they were flying at the time. There was all the atmosphere and banter between the two managers before the game and stuff like that. But we went away to Crawley, and I think we were underdogs at the time. I think we were on a bad run. We battered them 3-0. Do you remember it?
Yeah, that was right at the start of the season.
Right at the start of the season,
coming off the losses, and then we beat them. What was it? 3-4?
3-4, yeah. Like, I think we went 2-3 up early. I just remember thinking this could be the turning point because they were flying. They were a big, boisterous, strong team, physical, and everybody was like writing us off because we were this so-called footballing team. We were too nice for the league, all the rest of it. And I remember going there and winning. But that's one that definitely sticks in my mind that year. Obviously after the Port Vale one, but that one as well.
Right, gotcha. Who else we got here? So we've got a question from Steve on Twitter, and Steve is asking Paul, what went through your mind when you saw Cy Ferry emerge from the players' tunnel in just his sloggies?
Well, that's my fault, to be honest. So I used to, well, listen, I grew up with him. I knew how his mind worked. So I used to, so we're sitting in the tunnel and he's on the dressing room. I was like, "You've not got it in you to run out here with your pants on." And everybody's like, "Cads, don't," because they knew it. Like, so I was the kind of guy that would like listen to me because he knew I was like straight. I was proper like a decent pro and stuff like that. But like, you've not got it in you. He's like, "You know I have." I was like, "No, you don't. You don't have it in you." And then sure enough, he's out there with the pants on. Isn't he? So yeah, so he blames me for that. But listen, I didn't strip him. He made the decision to run out with his pants.
Yeah,
what a character!
But he stayed in his pants.
Oh, he stayed in. Yeah,
he didn't put his t-shirt on or anything. He stayed in them.
He was a massive part that year. The character he was honestly, you see it now with open goal. But listen, I spent the best part of 7-8 years every day with Si from youth team at Celtic, from under 14s, 15s at Celtic, right through to 23 or whatever at Swindon. So the laughs we had, and oh my God, he's the best character in football, honestly, by a country mile.
I'm gagging to get him on, Paul, but I wouldn't even know how to handle him, to be totally honest. Because
he'd take over. What a guy, man.
Right, what else we got here? Okay, so Pete is asking, Lucas Maguire. When we signed Lucas Maguire, he was touted as a stop you in your tracks signing. What was your thoughts when we signed him, and what were your thoughts when you saw him on the training ground?
Yeah, Big Lucas was another good guy. Big physical guy, but seen milk turn quicker. Couldn't move, Big Lucas, to be honest. But I think he came with a big deal. I think he got quite a big financial package. I think he was on $5-6 grand a week. I think people were touting. So I don't know if he'd played. I don't know if he had a cap. Did he maybe had a cap or something? But he came obviously with a lot of expectation. But another one that probably didn't reach the heights that he should have, that we expected him to. But again, probably just coming to this league and coming to British football wasn't quite for him.
Yeah, a little bit of a fish out of water.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a player who did sort of a similar ilk that did impress me was Gabilondo.
Gabby.
Yeah, when he first arrived, I thought, he's got a nice touch on him. He's got a bit of pace. Certainly got a bag of tricks. What was the story with him? Was that another lad that just was struggling to settle into sort of British?
Yeah, Gabby had good moments. Gabby, didn't he? I think put the cross in for Rafa, the Bristol City game in the cup. A couple of decent moments. Spaniard had nice touches, but another one that probably, without anything really happening, just run its course. I think it's just kind of Rafa started to play a bit more on the left. Kind of Gabby struggled to get in the team, obviously with Matty on the right, and it just kind of sort of run its course. He kind of wanted to get back home. The Canio wasn't really going to stand in his way, and it just kind of ended that way.
Well, so Sue, funny enough, you mentioned Rafa. Sue's asking, was Rafa a teacher's pet?
No. The brilliant thing about Rafa's got a better Scottish accent than I do. Rafa grew up in Scotland, played in Scotland for years, so he's got an unbelievable Scottish accent. So, but Rafa was interpreter. He was brilliant because we used to, the Canio would be ranting and raving and Italian and this and that, and there was about 25 heads that used to just turn to the left and look at Rafa and wait for him to tell us what the Canio had just splattered out in Italian. So Rafa was the interpreter. So he was a little sweetie wife. No, he was good though. Rafa, a great guy. Brilliant.
What else we got here? Okay. Oh, this is Max, a Celtic fan. Actually, Paul, this is a non-Swindon related question. How good is Lionel Messi at close quarters? He's heard you talking about him before, but he wants you to tell the Swindon fans what he's all about.
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest, I think he was a bit nervous to face me that night. He had to stay over, he stayed over the right and that had Ronaldinho, but yeah, listen, to see him and to see what he actually went on and done since then as well is ridiculous. Just to say that I'd shared a pitch with these guys is something that I'll live with me for the rest of my life. It was a dream come true, obviously playing for Celtic first and foremost. It was my boyhood club, but to get on the same pitch as these guys was surreal. The talent on that pitch, but Messi that night was on another level. Ronaldinho was on another level. Samuel Eto'o, Thierry Henry. Listen, I can name the full team, but yeah, that's something I'll never forget. But he is as good on the pitch as everybody else can see on the TV.
So are you of do you have an opinion, Paul? Having shared a picture of him, you biased towards him, but is he a better? Do you think he is the GOAT, or do you think Ronaldo is?
Oh, it's a horrible question,
isn't it?
I love Lionel Messi for everything he's done, but for me, this will be controversial, but I just like the fact that Ronaldo's went to different countries and been successful. You know what I mean? I like the fact that he's went to England being successful. He's went to Spain being successful. He's went to where else has he been? I can't remember where else. He's done well with Portugal. Just stuff like that. I quite like the fact that he's been successful in other countries. But I don't think we should have a debate separating them. Just acknowledge them for who they are. The two of them. You probably never see two players like that ever again.
No, I think you're right.
In the same era.
Well, we're not. I'm a little bit older than you, Paul, but yeah. I look at. I grew up in an era where you had that perpetual debate about Maradona versus Pele.
Yeah.
And the easy get out on that was always, well, hang on a minute, they played in two different eras,
yeah.
So it was quite hard to compare. But it's kind of difficult with Ronaldo and Messi, isn't it? Because
I know.
They're of the same era, and to all the points you just mentioned, I think the sad thing is that it hasn't really worked out for Messi over in Paris.
I know.
So it gives people a bit of a stick to kind of prod him with. But I guarantee you, Messi at the end of the season goes back to Barcelona, he'll pick up where he left off.
Yeah, they'll win the league.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Right, we'll give. We normally do, which it's a little bit one of my proverbial frustrations, Paul, with this show, is we always have such bloody large audience, but everyone's a little bit shy. So I'm going to just give everyone a couple of seconds to, hopefully, if they've got any questions, if you want to send in a request, guys, and jump on, Paul's all ears for you. You can either hit your emoji button and give me a nod, and I'll turn it on for you. Or you can send in a speaker request and we will turn them on. But Ty, while we're waiting for people to get themselves sorted out, is there anything you wanted to ask, Paul?
I've got a couple lined up, I can't lie. First one, going back to Tommy Miller, Si's gone on about it before, but this whole Dr. Miller thing, how did that really come about?
I had left by then, to be honest. I don't know the full story behind it. No, I'll find out and I'll get back to you. 100%. I'll find out last Si.
And then the other one is, it's sort of two questions related. So first of all, what is the obsession with jam sandwiches?
First of all,
top question.
This jam sandwich thing has dragged on for years, and it's genuinely, it came from Si and Charlie Mulgrew, another unbelievable character. So we were at Blackburn, me and Charlie together, and we went vegan. But I am the fussiest eater ever. Like, I don't like cheese, I don't like butter. I'm just so fussy. So we went vegan. We watched a documentary on Netflix as a team, and about 15 years decided to go vegan for the first 6 months of the season. And I just lived on jam sandwiches for 6 months. So Charlie used to say every time he seen me, I had a jam sandwich in my hand, because I don't like anything else. I just used to live off meat, basically. And obviously we went vegan, so I was just eating jam sandwiches, about 10 jam sandwiches a day to keep myself going. And that's where it came from. That's literally, there's no big obsession with it. I couldn't tell you the last time I had a jam sandwich, to be honest, but it was just at that moment in time somebody said, you can eat jam sandwiches, and I was all over it. So that was all I ate.
And then there's a follow-up to that. There's a video that's gone around on Twitter. It went round the day you came back under Richie, and it looks like you're led in a bathtub eating a jam sandwich.
Oh, he's on the loo, Tyler. He's blatantly on the job.
Yeah, or on the toilet. It just looks quite funny. So I sort of need to know what's going on there.
Absolutely, I was on the toilet.
Yeah.
Si had texted me. I think it was Si that started that again, and I sent him that video. And before I know it, was all over the place. And he texted me back saying, Cads, I think he phoned me and said, Cads, I think I've accidentally put that on my Twitter. I'm like, how can you accidentally? I said, Si, I'm sitting in the toilet. He's like, that's all right, mate. But that's just the kind of guy. He's like, I'm all for a laugh, and that doesn't bother me at all.
So, Paul, here's a question from Charlie via my direct messages asking, can you think of your funniest Cy Ferry story? It doesn't have to be Swindon related, apparently.
Oh,
Preferably one that doesn't get us in trouble either.
Yeah. That narrows it right down.
Although, no, I'm going to tell you this, Tyler. I've got to be totally frank, mate. We're after the watershed. So,
fair point. Fire away.
There was one I was involved as well. So when we were younger, this is going to sound so weird, but when we were younger, we were in with Celtic, the first team, and we had Paddy McCourt and Scott Brown were sharing, and it was one of those interconnecting rooms, and it was me and Cy Ferry. So they decided to phone the reception and tell them that Paddy's MacBook wasn't working. So once the receptions came up, had a look and stuff like that, they gave us like a little sly knock on the door, and me and Cy Ferry run through absolutely bollock naked, not a stitch on, and started bouncing on the bed, and the guy's face, he didn't know where to look. There was just like balls bouncing everywhere and that, and he was like, I think that's your computer down now, sir. He just walked out, and it was just, that's one of very, very many. That was just the mental stuff we used to get up to.
So Paul, how did if you could try and sort of look at your two championship sort of sides in a bubble and put one on one side, one on the other.
Yeah.
How did the two sides kind of stack up against each other in terms of sort of the quality of banter, the personalities and whatnot? Which, if you could have picked your favourite, if one was a baby, which would you go for?
Oh, God. Listen, see, for football, you don't win stuff very often. I feel like at a level like where I've played at from the championship down, it's very rarely you win stuff. So to do it twice is unbelievable. So you have special memories on each occasion. Like the first one was that determination, that desire, that team bonding with literally everything that went on with the Canio. But the second one, like the latest one, listen, I know we played some unbelievable football, but it took us a while to get going. But the one under Richie Williams, some of the stuff, I remember coming to sing back in November, and obviously already free flowing by then. But it was an absolute joy to play in. Honestly, like, it was a style that I had never played in, where fullbacks would come inside, I'd get on the ball in the middle of the pitch, I'd overlap, I'd be expansive. So that style, in terms, I think that's just because it was maybe 10 years later on that the styles had evolved from, it's like when Pep come over, when Jurgen Klopp come over, everybody tried to do that. But that's team, the most recent one in 2020 was a joy to play in. But I always think to myself, actually, I think this all the time, and you could probably answer this better than me. Who do you think would win out of those two teams?
Sure. Well, it's a
well, here you go. Actually, I'll put it back on yours, right?
Yeah. No, I'm
going to get another one, right? So, who do you think would win? But you as supporters, what one would you rather go and watch?
Right. Okay.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know you're meant to be asking the questions here, but
no. It's brilliant. No, I'm on that. I'll tell you what. I'll take it on first. I would say, it's a similar debate, Paul, to what when people say to me, the Ozzy Ardiles Swindon team in 89-90 versus the Glenn Hoddle team in 93,
right?
Because and there are similarities as well, because the Glenn Hoddle team was I don't want to be overly disparaging, because there were some quality players right through. I mean, Mickey Hazard was on the show last week talking about this. There were real technicians in that team from back to front. And, you had wing-backs, you had real, like John Moncur, Mickey Hazard, Glenn Hoddle, essentially in the centre. You had, goal scorers up top. I mean, flamboyant stuff. But so much of it went through Glenn. And what you've kind of described tonight is like so much of what that collective achieved seemed to be sort of being driven relentlessly through Paolo. Weirdly, the 89-90 team was probably more Paolo-esque in terms of it being a unit, but the 93 team was more entertaining to watch. But yet so much of that entertainment came through, literally moments of brilliance from Glenn Hoddle, Mickey Hazard. But I would sooner watch the '93 team.
Yeah.
And so flipping that, so a long-winded way to say, flipping that back to your question, I would probably rather watch the Wellens team for the entertainment factor and the quality of football. But yet, so much of the entertainment from the Paolo team actually came from some of his antics as well on the touchline.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we were doing poorly, him steaming up into the stands, or him waving like he did at Oxford, when we lost at their place, going out on the pitch and swinging the scarf around and like giving it to their fans, that carried your spirits forward. So, after all that waffle, I would say my favourite of the two was the Paolo team, but I'd rather watch. Like, if you gave me an entity to watch, I'd rather watch the Richie.
Yeah, see, I would say similar. Like in terms of to play in Richie Wellens' team was unbelievable, but being captain of the Cannons team and winning the league by being there all season first and foremost, and knowing what we went through, was probably. Listen, I could never say one was better than the other, but it probably just tipped it in terms of achievement.
Yeah.
See, I think I'd probably rather go for Paolo. Purely just like watching that William running was always quite entertaining. It was one of my first years, so
yeah,
I've got the soft spot. Although if they played each other, I think I'd still fancy that Paolo one.
I do as well.
As much as that as Doyler would give the centre halves an issue. I just think the way that Paolo's midfield just ran. Yeah. As much as Anthony and Jordan would get through the work, as much as I love Doubts, he wasn't much of a runner, was he?
No,
he was just
Paolo. Players, No, I agree. Yeah, I think you've got a point there. I think the 2012 team would wear the 2000 the most recent one down. I think.
I quite like this, Paul. You've tapped into something here, actually. There okay? So speaking as captain of Swindon Town, speaking to a couple of diehard fans, literally generations apart. So I'm in my mid-40s. Tyler's in his late teens. What is there anything that you would ask us? So you've asked about the Paolo team, but is there ever anything that you've thought whilst you've been on the pitch that I wonder what was going through the fans' minds at that time?
Oh, actually, there was one moment. Do you ever remember where Phil Smith manhandled Matt Ritchie in the box?
Yes.
What did you think of that at that moment in time? Because I just thought, like, that's the first I'd seen that properly. Like, literally picked him up with the scruff of the neck and was going to kill him.
Yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? It's a little bit like the kind of Bowyer Dyer piece.
Yeah, do you think that's brilliant, or do you think, what the fuck is he doing?
Yeah. You're sort of caught between. I mean,
there's a mix, isn't there?
You get like the passionate fan in your head is going. Well, it clearly shows they care, this, that, and the other. But I remember there's like you start worrying about, like, is this unprofessional? To what extent, should that be happening? I mean, that's the kind of thing that you imagine happens on the training ground, but you would hope that as a couple of pros, it's a golden rule you don't ever take out onto the pitch. It's a little bit like airing your dirty linen. It's kind of how I feel about it. I mean, what about you, Ty?
No, I think I'll probably just repeat what you said. It was, at the time I was young, so it was entertaining watching it, but when you look back, it's sort of like, you don't want to see it, but at the same time, it's a bit of entertainment in it, so it's worth a laugh.
Another one, see, 2010 when we got relegated, if there was one person or a group of people you put it down to, who did the fans like? Was it the board? Was it the manager? Was it the players?
So it was easy to turn on Paul Hart, and I think he got singled out.
Yeah,
and it was a bit of a shame because obviously when Paul Bowden comes in and he's kind of got the caretaker role, and he's such a legend at our places, Paul. But it was just too late for him, and that I thought was a real shame because I think you've only got to look at what Paul's achieving now with the Welsh setup, particularly with all the young players. You kind of hope that Paul wouldn't have got that role and maybe maybe that factored in that Paul never really getting an opportunity thereafter to do the job properly. But
he was a great guy, Bloods.
The frustrating thing from my point of view was I'd seen. So this is one of my biggest regrets, Paul, about getting involved with Swindon Town on a business level. So as I mentioned to you at the start, being involved with Swindon Town through 442, up until that stage, I'd just been a supporter.
Yeah.
And to then come in and start, I mean, before we got to Swindon, I started seeing some of the inner workings of football, and it really sort of takes off your rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah.
And you start being privy to a few sort of conversations, and you meet certain personalities. You know, they say, like, never meet your heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of the lads that I met, sort of certainly up the football leagues, really burst my bubble in terms of it actually. I won't mention names, but I hoped he would be a lovely bloke, and he doesn't come across that way at all. I think when I got to Swindon, I think it was just seeing the reality of my club and the actual realities of the, you know, things like the finances, the struggles that, you know, I mean, we were coming out the back of an era where we had Sam Parkin on a few weeks ago, and Sam was describing, you know, the players being paid by cheque, being paid late, things like this.
Yeah.
And when you start, this is somewhat from a fan's point of view, you go from being really, really, really proud of your club because obviously you're a supporter. When you start hearing things like that, and you've got your own business head as well, you start thinking, well, hang on a minute, like, that's a bit too Bob. And it really sort of bursts your bubble. So I think, you know, from my point of view, yeah, that was a real shame that I came and saw that 2010 relegation team. I wish I hadn't come and watched them train, because I mentioned about seeing the cliques. And it would be easy for me to kind of point fingers, but I just think there was some players that you just thought that they shouldn't. I don't know. They were, and this is just a fan's perspective, Paul. Right? So stepping back into just being a supporter, I remember sort of seeing, for example, you had I think it was the three French-speaking lads that were all doing the warm down after the training session. And it was almost like people couldn't wait to get away from them. And that, rightly or wrongly, that was just the impression that I remember getting at the time. And I was just like, oh, well, that's, you know, clearly that's a bit of a shame. You know, and then you sort of, you pick up on people like, you know, you started asking questions about, you know, motivation levels of people at certain stages of the career. I think David Prutton got a lot of stick because, you know, it was just, listen, did he really want to be there at that stage of his career? You started asking.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
So, difficult, bearing in mind I'm just speaking as a fan. Those were the kind of areas that my eyes were training towards and going, I don't, you know, that left a real sort of like bitter taste in my mouth. How about you, Ty? What were you thinking about 2010?
Oh, I just put it all down to Paul Caddis, really. I thought,
big time Charlie coming down from Celtic,
annihilated that dressing room.
That was the first season for me, really, which is a bit of a shame that was the first one. But so I can't really say that I'd have put it down to anything. But looking back, I never think you can single out anyone for a relegation. It is always a bit of like, you can't say it's a team effort because it's not like they're trying to go down, but yeah, I don't think it's a specific group or anything.
Yeah.
So, all right, there's another question that's come in, Paul, and I was hoping to save this for another time, but seeing as we'll ask it. Obviously, you were involved in a squad that got an unbelievable result up the A420, which I don't think this show would exist if that hadn't happened. What was the so the question was, what was the vibe that day after obviously having got the result, having played in derby defeats, and what were your thoughts on achieving that result but not being able to share it with the fans in the stadium?
Yeah, first of all, I was obviously buzzing that we got that result, especially because I set them up for the first goal. Yeah, so listen, I don't have great memories of that season. That would be probably the only one, to be honest. So listen, we're obviously absolutely buzzing that Big Tom's managed to come up with two goals in the last seconds, really. Just delighted for the people behind the scenes, the proper guys that grew up, born and bred Swindon fans. You've got Jonah, the kit man, Steve, the kit man. You've got other people behind the scenes that work in the office and stuff like that. It's been a long time since we beat them, so it was just it was more for them than anything, and obviously the supporters. It was difficult for when you have moments like that. You want to spend them with your supporters. So listen, I don't really have too many memories of that season. I absolutely hated it, if I'm honest. I grew up as a kid wanting to play in front of supporters. That season for me was like, it's probably ended my career, if truth be told. I absolutely hated it, and that's me being honest. I would come out for the warm-up, and I think it showed my performances. I was dreadful last year. I'd come in, you'd walk onto the pitch and it'd be like a big sponge. It just nothing would just drain everything out of you. It'd be like squeezing water out of a sponge. It's just like you walk out there and there's no roar. We're having conversations before games about how loud the commentary should be on. Like there's noise in the background while the game's on to try and make it feel real, and it was false. But we could obviously touch on that at a later date if you want. But nah, I hated that season. Sorry to put a pure downer on that. Good question.
No. Well, I'll cheer it up then, because that was definitely one of my highlights of recent years, and I'm a bit annoyed that my mum's listening as I'm saying this, because when Brody or we'll give it Tyler or Brody, whichever one you want.
Yeah.
When that second one's gone in, I've in fact punched a hole in my bedroom wall, celebrating it, and she doesn't know about that. And
she does now.
So she does now, but I've said it to Paul Caddis. So what's she gonna do?
Hey Paul, I'll tell you what, mate. So I will never forget. I was sat in my lounge with my laptop watching that, and my daughter had just told me that she was dating one of my mates from work.
Oh,
Christ!
So, if you imagine, she's come down and told me that it was a little bit like, I don't know if you're a fan of the Lethal Weapon movies, but it was a little bit like what happens in the Lethal Weapon movie. She comes in and says, "Oh, like I've got something to tell you." So she drops that bombshell on me, and then I literally, within a couple of minutes, Brody gets on the end of your assist, and it's Bosch, and it's 1-1. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's definitely sort of like softened the blow. And then obviously 10 or so minutes later, I'm no joke, I'm sprinting around my garden, and I'm doing the Ryan Giggs in my garden up at Villa Park. I'm swinging my town shirt around my head. Next door neighbour literally is leaning out the window saying to me, like, is everything all right? Like, have you lost the plot? She thought I'd literally gone nuts. But the one thing I will say about that season was that even though there weren't too many moments to cheer about, the number of times my next door neighbour sent my wife a text asking if we were having some kind of domestic incident in the house. I was literally, and then she kind of got used to it in the end, and she was like, "Oh right, no, it's Saturday, right? It's match day."
No, it was rubbish.
I totally lost it that day. That was a magical moment. But right, so have we got any more questions for Paul?
Surprisingly, mate, I've still got more. So one of them's still touching on last year, but the next ones will be a bit better. I'm still a big fan of him, and I know that doesn't go down well with most Swindon fans looking back. But last year, what do you think quite went wrong for Matty Kovar? And looking at this year now, I think he's just got 4 clean sheets in his first 4 games for Burton. So there's clearly a keeper in him, but what do you think just quite didn't work out?
I think first and foremost, I don't think we done enough as a defence, as a team, to look after him as a young lad coming to men's football. So I don't think we helped. He probably got more shots at him than he ever faced at any level at Man United, so I don't think that helps. So the probability of losing goals is a lot higher because we're conceding a lot more shots, we're conceding a lot more chances because we weren't good enough as a team and as a unit. So I think we've got to take blame as players as well. And then just as we touched on about earlier on about when you win games, it breeds confidence. You build momentum, but when you're losing games, you also lose confidence and you build. Everyone talks about momentum always being a positive. Momentum can be a negative as well. So we were losing games of football constantly. He was making mistakes from time to time. So his confidence goes down. He was building a negative momentum. We were building a negative momentum as a team, and I just don't think we helped. So I think, especially the more experienced ones, have got to take a lot of criticism for him because, as you see, he's obviously a good goalie. Listen, he wouldn't have been Man United and still there if he wasn't a good goalie. And I think he's went to Burton and had 4 clean sheets out of 4 starts or something like that, and done quite well. So yeah, I would put that. Listen, that's maybe just me, but I always try and look at what we can do to help a young player, and I don't think we helped him.
So, Paul, do you think? So, take someone like Stevie Bender, for example, super goalkeeper, but clearly playing behind a decent back line. How did the two keepers, from your perspective, appreciate? Again, they're doing a lot of their training with the keeper coach.
Yeah.
The Mildy will have them away doing their own thing, but seeing them at sort of as close quarters as you could, how did they sort of stack up against each other ability-wise?
Well, Kovar was different in terms of with his feet. Kovar could have played centre mid, no problem. He was unbelievable.
I told you, Mark. I told you.
He was unbelievable with his ball at his feet. So he was different in terms of that. But Stephen Bender, again, played in a winning team who was a well-oiled machine, as I touched on earlier again, that we were winning games. He was beating constant. Bender was a very good goalie, and I know Mildy thinks really highly of him. So that was probably the main difference, more in terms of confidence levels. Listen, when you're confident, you're a complete... I had my worst year of my full footballing career last year, and it's the first time in 16, 17 years of playing professional that I just lost my confidence. I was rubbish, and I couldn't get going, I couldn't do anything right, and it happens, and that's just life. So for it to happen to a young lad, then I can only imagine it's a lot more difficult to happen to somebody that's played the game for a while.
You've been a bit hard on yourself there, Paul. I get it. If I'm going to be super critical, I'll definitely, compared to obviously what we were used to seeing from Paul Caddis in a red shirt, it weren't at that level.
No.
In comparison, I could mention names, but you'll know the names I mentioned. Some of the lads that came in from outside the club and played alongside you were an absolute disgrace. And you certainly weren't that. So, mate, don't dwell on that too much. You certainly haven't soared your status at the club, mate, off the back of last year, I would say.
Well, that's good to know.
Go on, Ty, what else you got?
The next one's a bit more related to this season. It sort of touches on last year, but not too much.
Yeah.
So obviously at Blackburn, you played with Payne and Ben Gladwin, and Gladders comes under a lot of stick from some Swindon fans because of how he sort of plays the game. He's a bit more relaxed on the ball, bit slower. But me and Mark absolutely love the bloke. Think he's a brilliant player. It's just sort of what do you think of Big Ben?
So yeah, I played with Payne at 3 clubs actually: Swindon, Bradford, and
Bradford as well. He played with Doyler at Bradford as well.
Yeah, we played with Doyler at Bradford as well. Yeah, Ben Gladwin, I played with him at Blackburn. If he didn't get injured, he could have been anything he wanted to be. He was powerful, right foot, left foot. Got a change of pace, got a change of direction. Very good, very, very good player, good passer. Can cross, he could do everything. Ben Gladwin could do everything. There was days we'd come off in training and we'd be like, he's unbelievable. Like, as I said, he's got everything. He can score goals, he's a powerful runner, he's a good dribbler. But he just plays in a way that some fans don't like. Some fans want everything 100 mile an hour, and he's not like that. He's not like that anymore. He's had a lot of injuries. He's slowed down a bit, and he's more technically. Listen, I've seen Glad quite a few times this year, and he's came on off the bench, and he's changed games just by one pass, and it splits defences. And listen, I like Ben Gladwin, but I understand why fans will be on him for. It's just his whole demeanour. It looks lazy, but it's not. It's just the way he plays the game, and that's just him. But and Payne, for instance, listen, Payne's the kind of guy that you love to play with. I used to just wrap balls into Payne all the time. You just want to get people like that on the ball as often as you can. If they lose it, then fine. But 9 times out of 10 he'll make the right decision. Played him at Blackburn. He played the second half of the season for us, done really well. He was probably our best player at Bradford. Him and Lewis O'Brien at Huddersfield just now, probably the 2 best players. And at Swindon, listen, he's shown it now, and he's obviously been really good this year again, and probably been a big miss when he's been injured, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
the spell without him wasn't fun at all, especially when we didn't have him, Maka, or sort of Reedy, like the 3 sort of things you could say. Yeah. It's not been easy.
If you were a betting man, Paul, it's probably and don't feel free to not answer this if you think it's unfair of me asking. But if you're a betting man, do you think if we don't go up this year, do you think that Paney will hang around next year?
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, Paney will still be next year. I think just Paney got to the stage where, like for instance, last year Paney could have left. He could have left at the end of the season. I think there was a clause in his contract. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I don't know if it's out there. It might be, but there was a clause in his contract if the club get relegated, he could leave for a free. So Paney had his chance to leave, and he decided to stay because Paney's obviously I know him really well, and he's got this thing now where he just wants to find a club. He's had a lot of clubs for short spells. He's been on loan spells. He just wants to find a place that he's comfortable with, and he's playing every week. He's playing regularly, and he's enjoying it. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. He's back closer to home. He's a London lad, so yeah, I think he'll stay.
It's interesting, Paul, because I think I was with you, Ty, on the day. I spoke to Paney right at the start of the season. The reason it sticks in my mind, the first thing was that he, not knowing that I'd worked in football, he just saw me as another one of these fans hanging around the Arkles, having a chat with players. But he stopped and spoke to us for a good I'd say a good 5-10 minutes.
Yeah,
and he was saying that similar to what you've just said, because I just said to him, look, cheers for hanging around in the summer, Paney, and that you know that you're important to this team. You're a big player for this club. It means a huge amount coming from a fan, like a huge amount that you've stayed. And he looked and his face just lit up. And he literally said what you just said there. He said, look, I want to settle down. I want to find a home. I didn't ever want to leave. And I've probably spoken to him on a couple of occasions since, and he said similar things to me. And so whenever I've seen sort of, the Twitter debates about the big clear out that'll happen at the end of the season if we don't go up, and everyone's leaving, and Reedy will go and Paney will go and this, that and the other. Some of these lads have looked you square in the eye and said, like, I've got absolutely no intention of leaving. And yeah, obviously Paney's going to, because he's got to, he'll have to negotiate a contract. He's going to keep his cards close to his chest. But
yeah, of course.
I'm with you. I don't see Payne leaving. I really don't. And I think the other reason for saying this as well is that I hark back to the Swindon Town team that I was talking about earlier. We talked about 93 when we got promoted under Hoddle. But the 91-92 team is very, very similar to the Swindon predicament that we've had this season, where you can see that something's building. And that 93 team, the 91-92 team with Duncan Shearer up top that scored an awful lot of goals, played some bloody good football. It was so frustrating because they were almost there, just like this year. They just couldn't quite get it together. But the following year, it clicked. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen next season. I don't fancy us this year, but I genuinely think it's going to go next year. And I think he will be, just like Mickey Hazard or Glenn Hoddle was important in 93, I think Paney will be that player for us next year. Got no doubt about it. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Yeah,
definitely. He's a big player for the club, isn't
he? Yeah, I'd say so.
He's got to be a big player for the club because he really ain't in size, bless him. Absolute player either way. I love that man.
Now,
first season he's hit 10 goals, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That shocked me when I found that out. I thought he'd surely done it before.
Yeah.
No, but you'd expect. This is the thing, for someone that gets in the positions that Paney does, you'd expect him to get into double figures. But maybe Grealish was talking about it, wasn't he, last week, about his own game, about maybe I don't shoot enough. He likes assists. I kind of get the impression that Paney's of that mindset, but this year he's just, obviously the drop, he shouldn't be in League Two, but if he gets the opportunity to shoot, he's going to score goals.
Yeah.
So you got any more?
No, just it's led us on quite nicely, this discussion to the AOB.
Yeah, it certainly has. But before we do that, Paul, Hoops did say to me that he was going to come on and he might have the odd rascal question or two lined up. And I can see that he's listening. I can see him perched mercilessly to your right-hand side. And I'm just waiting for that speaker request. He's dropped off the bottle job.
He's maybe be having out trouble for his missus.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Well, look, I mean, Paul, what we normally do at the end of this sort of segment is move on to a bit of any other business, where obviously we've got Hartlepool to talk about and a few other bits. It'd be brilliant if you want to hang around and contribute to these bits. But
that's fine.
Are you commentating at the weekend, Paul?
I am, yeah, with Andrew.
All right. Super. Well, we'll try and keep the powder dry. If there's any exclusives that you're going to drop, we won't query around that.
Nah.
What's all right. I guess I'll start the Hartlepool conversation, Paul, by sort of saying how do we? I mean, realistically, we ain't got that many games left. We're still in with a shout. How do we? How do they bounce back away from? I mean, obviously, away from home, our away record's decent this year. But dreadful result. I was there on Saturday. It was awful. Really, truly was awful. Uncharacteristic for me. I got embroiled in some verbals in the town end because, you could really see that people were just losing their rags. Certain players being picked on sort of unfairly, and unfortunately I rose to the bait and gave someone a bit of a volley and got one back for my troubles. But what coming at it from a player's point of view, Paul, what's going through their mind, do you think? 4 games remaining, still got a very, very slim chance of making it to the playoffs. What's going through their minds, do you think?
I think they've just, the only mindset is now it's points over performances. Got to win games of football now. There's 4 left, and the mindset now is let's go and win at Hartlepool. They can't affect anything else, so forget about everything else round about them. If Swindon don't win their 4 games, then they won't stand a chance if they don't look after themselves. So they've just got to look after their own house before even worrying about anything else round about them. And that starts obviously Saturday. It's going to be a tough game. It's horrible to go up there, but listen, sometimes you've got to win ugly to get where you want to go.
So do you think it could be? I mean, do you think it'd be a liberating thing for them, Paul? Like, being able to play with that mindset, or is that still a bit of a kind of an albatross?
No, you're probably right. It's probably a bit of a relief now that more and more people are writing them off, and it's like, oh well, we'll concentrate on next year. So that kind of chat round about playoffs and going up, etc., is maybe eased a little bit, which can help, but that's just depends on the modern day football if they're on social media and see all that and believe it all. But I just think they've just got to concentrate on what's in the dressing room and win the next game, and then again win the next one, and then win the next one, and see where you are.
Did you? I mean, given where we're at this stage of the season, Paul, did you expect more from them at this stage, or do you think they're? I mean, the league doesn't lie, does it? But I mean, there's quality throughout that squad, but obviously no pre-season, injuries at key times, suspensions at key times, loss of key loan players at key times, probably all unforeseen.
Yeah.
Are they where you expect them to be at this stage?
Honestly, I don't want to sound too critical, but I still think we'll get playoffs. Genuinely do still think we'll get playoffs. I think when you look at the squad, that I know, listen, everybody can get hit with injuries, and that's part and parcel of it, but I think they've got a good enough squad to get into League One, in my opinion. I think they do, but it's been evident at times when they've missed players. It's been important players that they've been unable to replace because of the size of the squad, which is obviously out of the manager's hands with embargoes and stuff like that. So if they've got their strongest team on the pitch, then of course they're expected to be up there, but you can't always have your strongest team on, and I think that's where they're suffering. I think Swindon this year are missing pace, in my opinion. I think they're missing a bit of pace. I think they've missed Harry McCurdy, obviously, of late, who would be a nuisance up top. I just think they've lacked a little bit of pace. What would you say? Is there any real rapid players in the team, like forward players, do you know what I mean, that can stretch defences, and then that's when you can get the likes of Payne and that on the ball a bit more?
Well, I tell you, it's interesting because I know Tyler really wants to talk about one person in particular with some news has broken today. But yeah, I mean, there was pace and strength in our both Tyler and I have a lot of appreciation for Tyree Simpson. And
of course, yeah.
And I mean, Tyrese. Tyrese and Harry was scaring the bejesus out of this division earlier in the season. Obviously, both of them getting in amongst the goals, building a really interesting partnership. And I think when we were playing the 3 or ultimately a 5 at the back, call it what you will, with the wing backs, and we had the 2 up top, that was working supremely well. And I think when Tyrese went off, you saw a dip in results, and the gaffers had to respond by bringing in sort of like a 3-pronged attack to sort of try and compensate for it. But I mean, look, Louis Barry's not a slouch, is he, Ty?
No. I mean, I think we have got pace. The issue is sort of where it is in the team at times. Like the recent emergence of Manny Egbo, like he is quick. He is very quick. Like you say, Louis quite quick. McCurdy obviously coming back. He's quick. But yeah, I mean, if you could have an attack of Simpson, Barry, McCurdy, that's quick. It's technical. It might get out muscled by some defenses, but in terms of just what they can do technically, those three would be the ideal lot, I guess.
I think in terms of the pace coming from deeper, I think I've always been a fan of of somebody emerging from the midfield with a bit of pace, and
that's what I mean. Like just somebody to break the lines, even like Barry's quick, but he's a dribbler, and he doesn't want to be running behind. He wants to get the ball and dribble quick at people. Is it Egbo? It's maybe a bit deeper, if you know what I mean. It's just try to get that like you had with McCurdy and Tyrese Simpson. I think Tyrese Simpson's a massive miss for Swindon, to be honest. I really liked him. I think he was. I think he could have been a lot better at Swindon as well. Not through his own. I just think Swindon could have used him more. I said that a lot in commentary. Like he's a massive presence, getting the ball into him quicker. I know, like the way that the style they play, and obviously that's up for debate with a lot of. I know there's a lot of opinion on that about playing through, like how quick they play forward and stuff like that. But I just think Tyrese Simpson and Harry McCurdy, as you said, were striking up an unbelievable partnership.
Yeah, I think they were. I mean, the interesting thing is it's interesting what you say, Ty. What was it North? Oh, I'm trying to remember what the goal now. When I think Tyrese got a brace that day, where he's basically burst from deep, just literally shrugging off the mid. Not that it was the away game. I'm trying to think who it was against.
What the one? Was it the one Payne celebrated before it had gone in?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, Oldham away.
Oldham away. That was. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what Paul's saying, really, isn't it? Like getting it to him quicker, and no one can touch him. And then he repeated it against Northampton at our place, where again, like to get the ball into him quicker. And he's just literally with his bloody calf, like knocked the centre half flying, and then just bends one straight in the top. You see his confidence was growing week by week by week. But I don't know if you saw the news today, Paul, but Ipswich came out publicly and said that his representatives have said that he's not going to be there. He's not going to be at Ipswich next season. But
don't understand that at all, to be honest.
Well,
why call him? I just don't get it.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one because they've got an option on his contract for another year. So it'd be interesting to see how Ipswich play this because, I mean, whichever way you go, you see it going. I mean, if we make a move for him in the summer, it's going to go to a tribunal. Yeah. Because of his age, obviously he's got goals and he's put in some good performances, but they've been lower leagues. So you can imagine the tribunal ruling in our favour. But I can't envisage them wanting to sort of stick him on another year and, banish him to the stiffs. Because that doesn't look good for Ipswich, does it, as a club? Because they don't want to be seen as a club that treats their young players like that.
It's pure business from Ipswich and a business point of view. Like, just let him stay at Swindon till the end of the season. His value will go up because he'll continue to do better in the team. He'll obviously have more experience in the league. So business-wise for them, if they don't have any... Listen, Celtic used to do it with all us youngsters. If they don't have any vision of you playing in the first team, they'll make as much as they possibly can out of you. So him going back there and being, I know we've said that a million times, bomb squad, that's literally... He's in a bomb squad. So he's no use to his values. He's devaluing. Get him out and get him playing games. Get him where he was at Swindon. He was happy. He was scoring goals. And Ipswich have had no intention. I don't think he's even appeared since he came back, has he?
No.
So they've got no intention of playing him. So I don't know if they had something lined up for him. Maybe behind the scenes it was X, Y, and Z want to sign you, and we want you to go there. And he's maybe turned around and said, "No, I want to go back to Swindon." I don't know, but these things can happen. But I just think a business point of view from Ipswich, it's madness.
But even then, I mean, send him let him go back to Swindon, let him carry on scoring goals.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Because then you've got your option on him for the final year. So
exactly.
if he turns into the next Emil Heskey, for example, which is what he was looking like he was turning into, you bring him back in and you just let him score goals for you. And then obviously, if he's scoring goals for you at a higher level, Ipswich are a big club. the fans are getting behind him. He might fall back in love with being at the club again, and then Bob's your uncle. Give him a big fat contract that he can't say no to.
Of course.
I mean, obviously there are things that are happening behind the scenes that none of us are privy to, but it it just doesn't add up. But there's been an awful lot of chat about him returning to the county ground next season, which obviously we keep our fingers crossed is going to be the case. So, Paul, you've seen a lot of Swindon games this year, you've seen a lot of Josh Davison. Can you see him and Tyrese working as a partnership?
It's a difficult one, that, because they're a little bit different, but kind of the same, if you know what I mean. Like, you've got that same presence and stuff like that. I think both of them would be better with someone like Harry McCurdy rather than each other, if you know what I mean. I think Harry McCurdy suits both, but I think Tyrese is a better version of Josh Davison. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think Josh Davison's just a little bit, for me, Josh Davison looks that little bit further down the development, further around the development cycle. So there are things that he does that look a little bit more complete, but at the same time, the unpredictability of Tyree Simpson is just it always has you on the edge of your seat. I think with Josh, it's a little bit more. You kind of he does things that you would expect a number 9 to do. So watching him, and I don't mean this, in any way, shape, or form to detract from Josh, because I really enjoy watching him. But there's just something about Tyree Simpson that just has you on the edge of your seat, because you just don't know what he's going to do next.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of, interestingly, I think Sam Parkintyler said this, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago when he was talking about Charlie Austin. He said that the thing about Charlie when he first arrived on the scene was that because he hadn't come through the classic kind of striker coaching training that you would kind of go through, he was scoring goals because he was doing things that sort of League One defenders weren't expecting him to do. He was getting shots off at times that they were just like, it was catching people off guard.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say about Tyrese, really. Yeah, I mean, so Ty, what's your gut feeling for the weekend? Have you again stepping away from your comedy 4-0? What are you thinking prediction wise?
I don't want to hear you calling it a comedy when it was nearly bang on at Harrogate.
Mate, not being funny, I could score 4 past Harrogate.
Oh,
I've seen stiffer defences from wet toilet paper. They were appalling at the back. They were appalling at the back.
They were very bad at the back. That is true. But no, it's a long trip. But I'm going to say that we get a nice 2-0.
Oh yeah, all right. I don't see us sneaking it. It's going to be all or nothing. I think we're either going to end up with an uninspiring 1-1, which will infuriate everyone even more, or we're going to end up blitzing them 3-0. And we've got the ability to do it. Just need it to click. See, Paul, this one of the problems that we talked a lot recently about players coming back from injury, and you'll probably be able to inject some insight here about, actually just getting off people's backs, because at the level that they're playing, sometimes depending on the injury as well, it takes 2, 3, 4 games to kind of get back in, get your fitness up, but also get back into a rhythm. And I kind of see some of that in Louis Barry and to an extent Tomlinson, and obviously Tomo's picked up an injury again at the weekend. But it from the games you've seen, Paul, where you've seen these players coming back from injury, is that a fair thing to say?
Listen, you cannot replicate a match. So you can do everything you can in training, you can do all these runs and stuff like that, but the only way of getting match sharpness is playing matches. And unfortunately, the way it is with clubs like Swindon and that, there's not a reserve league, there's not an under-23, so to speak. So the only way of getting matches is first-team matches, and it can take a little while to get going, but you see that, like, for instance, Louis Barry, you can see the quality he does have and the quality he does possess, and I think he's getting better and better by the weeks. You all know better than me, because you obviously see every game, but that's what I've seen from him.
I think he's dynamite. And we heard a little whisper last week. There was a bit of a rumour going around the Legends Lounge that there's a strong possibility that we might be getting Louis Barry back next season again for a whole season, irrespective of the league that we're in. And I think it'd do him the world of good, because I think he just needs to add a bit of physicality to his game. With a full pre-season behind him and a belly full of goals in League Two, I can see him going back to Villa and doing some damage. Even if he had a recall halfway through the season, I don't think that would do him any harm at all. Where's your head at, Paul, in terms of a prediction? And I'm also, Paul, going to ask you about goal scorers, because I'm hoping you're going to mention a name that's going to make Tyler very nervous. And if you do mention that name, I'm going to get Tyler to explain to you why.
Well, score prediction, first of all, I think there's going to be goals in it, to be honest. I think because listen, you could get to half time, it could be 0-0, and I think Swindon will have the mindset that it's win or bust. I think there'll be goals in it. I think the way Swindon play when they do attack, they're obviously quite open. I'll go 3-2 to Swindon.
Let's have your goal scorers, Paul.
I will go Jack Payne with one Louis Reid free kick. And is McCurdy fit?
Yes, he is.
Tyler's relieved you've not said the name.
In fact, I'm happier that you said Reedy.
Who did you think I was going to say? Who did you not want me to say?
I did not want you to say Ellis. That's for sure.
Why?
Well, because if Ellis scores before the end of the season, I've got to get EI3 tattooed on my finger, because I may have been giving him a bit of pelters earlier in the season. I wasn't too keen on him as a left back, but now he's playing in midfield. He's like one of my favourites. But
would you take a 2-1 win with Ellis scoring in the last minute?
Yes, you would.
I tell you what. If at Walsall he scored a 90th minute winner for us to get playoff, I'd bite your hand off for it.
There you go then.
So basically, the backdrop was, Paul, at the point of at the peak of Tyler's ire against Ellis, he struck up a bet with the Great Western Reds that
is it the Man City game?
Yes. No. So you should probably explain in detail here, Tyler.
So it started at the City game. We were at the pub before the game, and we sort of said like, we've got to do something for the game, make something ride on it, because like none of us were expecting to actually beat Man City, and if you were stupid.
Yeah.
But so we said if Ellis scores against City, I'll get it tattooed on my finger, and so we shook our hands on it. It didn't happen. Like life goes on. We get past the Mansfield game. Obviously, he scored against Mansfield, and I thought, that was close. And then we get to before the Rovers. I think it was Bristol Rovers at home before that game, and we were at the pub again, and I just said, let's do it for the whole season, but you've got to have someone on the line as well. And so we shook the hands on. If Ellis scores, I get it. If Atkins scores, he's got to get it. So, in an ideal world, we're at Walsall on the final day. A win gets us playoffs. Atkins scores early, puts us 1-0 up. I'm giving him pelters the whole time. And then Ellis scores in the 90th to get us there.
Tattoos all around? Or we just call it quits then?
Well, no, that's tattoos all. In fact, if that happens, I think we get to do the tattoo to each other. Sure.
Oh, brilliant!
Those lines are coming out all squiggly, but
how confident are you, Paul, of playoffs?
Yeah, I think Swindon will make playoffs. I'm fairly confident.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll have a little bet, and I'll have a little bet with you, and I'll put my stake up. Right, if we get to the playoffs, and if we win the playoffs, I will get Paul Caddis tattooed on my right bum cheek to signify right back, along with 2 stars to signify the 2 trophies that you lifted some 9 years apart. How's that sound?
That sounds delightful. I'd love a picture as well.
Oh, you'll get a picture. Don't worry, there will be a picture. I'll make it a good one. I've just got to work out whether it's going to be like action shots or whether it's going to be like just one of your faces like you get on a T-shirt. I can't quite work out which it's going to be, but no, it'll happen.
Here's one that you might not be surprised about. Cy Ferry's got a tattoo in his arse.
That really doesn't shock me.
And it is the letters UR space name. So you tell everyone, I've got your name on my arse. That's a true story.
Why am I not surprised?
Oh, well,
surprised. Now, look, Paul, I put up my stake, but come on, mate. If you're that confident in your bet, surely you're willing to put up a stake. You don't have to go the whole hog.
Oh, I don't know if I'm going to have to go tattoos. I don't know what I can do. Don't know.
I'll take a signed shirt on Mark's behalf.
I'll take a Paolo Di Canio tattoo on your left bum cheek.
I'll put the Paolo Di Canio in between my bum cheeks. Signed shirt that is, then that's a nice one.
I'll let you have a think about that,
yeah.
Paul. And when you're ready, you pop that on the tweet.
Yeah. All right. Well do.
Right, Ty. If I think that's us done. So, Paul, what a pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries at all.
Brilliant talking to you. A real pleasure. We've got there's so much to talk to you about, mate. I mean, listen. I'm going to do my gushy bit and just say it. But it really has been an absolute treasure watching you in a Swindon Town shirt. I did actually sit next to you and have a conversation with you once while you were sat in your Birmingham City tie on up in the director's box when things had got a bit pear-shaped.
All right.
And you weren't in the best of places that day.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant. Genuinely, it was one of the fans singing your name when you came back that night. And it was truly brilliant seeing you lifting that trophy again under Richie Wellens. And I love the fact that you keep in touch with the club, that you're willing to come on and do these bits, and that you do the commentary with Andrew Hawes. Like, you're a really important player in the history of our football club. There's so much we could talk about, and hopefully you'll accept the invite to come back on.
Yeah, I'd love to come back
and do a couple more shows at some point. We like to keep it light and conversational. We keep it after the watershed for good reason. Yeah. But honestly, Paul, can't thank you enough. Ty, anything else to add, or is that us signing off?
Nothing else to add. Just been a pleasure.
Lovely.
Thanks very much, guys.
No worries. Cheers, Paul.
Cheers, guys.
I will sign off by just reminding everyone that the St Tom Broadbent Lounge is a Swindon Town fans Twitter space. The all that has been discussed does not reflect the views of Swindon Town Football Club, or indeed Sir Tom Broadbent himself, unless Sir Tom comes on the show, which he does infrequently, to either abuse us or say something moderately controversial. But we'll sign off with that rather sobering note. It's been a pleasure, Paul, Tyler. Thanks again, guys. Speak to you all again soon.